What's up, guys? It is Modern Craftsman Monday.
Monday.
This nice fade out, Tyler.
Thanks.
This week we have a fantastic guest, Jonathan Ward from Icon.
Huge get.
Yeah, this is a fantastic conversation. A pivotal. I said it wrong again.
Pivotal is correct.
Pivotal's perfect.
Riveting
Right.
would be pivoting and riveting.
It was a pivotal podcast for me.
Yeah. Nick's like,
I didn't even get to tell the guy I created vintage based on his model that he had
I
for
didn't know
trucks.
that.
oh,
Yeah.
I'm sure when he listens to this, he'll know. He's never listened.
Now
to
he
this.
will.
No, yeah, it was a good conversation. It was nice. He enjoyed getting into the conversation and running with it, and I feel like he took control.
So this is our first really like outside of the building industry, but insanely relatable.
Yeah.
I think we like all throughout it was like, man, that's just like home building.
I think if you don't have a takeaway of whatever you think you have as a ceiling right now, boundaries, there are none. Just break through them all.
Yeah, it's pretty. I think that it's very similar what he does, and he's created that market, and he's found his customer base, and he's kind of dug his heels into the ground and created a brand based on passion, and then the money has kind of come, and it's taken a long time, but it's like you said, the similarities and the dovetails between what he does, his industry, and what we do was it was awesome.
I loved it.
I can tell.
Guys,
Enjoy.
this podcast is brought to you by Duration Moulding and Millwork. Do you find yourself chasing rot on a few of your projects? End that problem forever by replacing moldings and siding with Duration, available in virtually any profile in order to match existing conditions or to just make a statement. Let's make the neighbors jealous. To learn more about Duration Polyash products, please visit their all-new website at durationmillwork.com.
No, look, I was having good fun doing this when I still tried to call it a hobby out of my 1.5 car garage. So if the world implodes, I think I'll move out to the middle of nowhere and set up one hell of a garage and continue to be the geek that I am, and with less overhead.
How long ago was that 1.5 car garage?
Well, it's a 1-car garage because we had to create some more room as we grew. But I bought this house when I was 17, and I'm 50. So the business was officially a hobby until I was about 20.
Okay.
And then I decided to go legitimate and introduce overhead and taxes.
So let's go back to 17
the fun
because
stuff.
Yeah, right. This stuff that none of us learn about or
Right?
or taught about, and we get screwed the first, I don't know, decade of dealing with it. But going back to 17, I want to talk about that because I feel like that's when, it's when you really are introduced to cars. Like some of us are introduced, earlier than that, but that's
it's freedom.
Yeah,
Like we get the car and your parents aren't driving, so it's like I go anywhere.
Isn't that crazy though now? Like I've got a 21-year-old and an 18-year-old. Both of them were the only kids basically in their class, let's say like 4 kids out of 40 cut school on their 15 and a half birthday to go get their driver's permit. The rest were like completely dispassionate about it, like, well, I got an app for that. Like it doesn't represent freedom to our kids' generation so much as it did to us. But no, my grandfather in the Chesapeake Bay in Virginia, World War II-ish forward, had like a corner car sales lot gas station garage. So I think it was in my blood. And my dad was always a car geek, still is. And I remember like seeing long trains of hot rods and stuff, going off to the shows on the weekends when my parents were dragging me to a dog show or whatever with the family. My parents were total dog show geeks. And so I remember being fascinated with all the colors and shapes and sound and form. And then really, I started restoring cars just as a hobby, but I imagine like you guys, like you've always been tinkerers. Call us artists, call us craftsmen, call us whatever you want, but like I've been a serial craftsman since I was. So I was sketching and then designing ideas for watches and stuff that I had, no concept that I actually could be a career or something to do. Like literally at those dog shows with my parents, I just bored out of my gourd. So I take my sketchbook around and try and hassle people for cash to sketch their dogs, So fine woodworking, traditional fumed quarter sawn white oak, arts and crafts era construction, pre-Raphaelite painting, constructive sculpting, deconstructive like marble, soapstone sculpting, leather crafts been my latest deep dive, but like cars were just such a cool extroverted way of combining so many different crafts and skills and aesthetics and surface coatings and textiles and woods and plating. Like it's just such an incredible mashup of so many different skill sets and creative expressions that I think I kind of came to cars in somewhat of a non-traditional angle, because that was really more the driver for it for me.
So, was it really everything, or was there one part of working on cars that you enjoyed the most?
I think it was all of it. It was like the challenge, right, to create synergy when you combine all these different ideas and materials. And I have no degree. I didn't go to college or anything, just like night school extension classes, university, YouTube, internship, a lot of travel-based craftsman experiences. Like I was in Japan for a couple months last year, and most of my time was doing like deep dives with the master steam bender wood craftsman, or the 7th generation textile factory in Kyoto, and on and on and on, and like literally just trying to suck up as much of it as I could. I mean, when I started doing cars, I was playing by the rules, so to speak, and like I'd restore them dead stock correct. And I quickly found that to be kind of boring, especially when you're driving. I'm like, I really prefer the aesthetic of like Korean War and back, or maybe even early 60s and back. But mechanically, we're so corrupted by modern vehicle engineering that I always felt a huge divide between the two. So I really more and more like started to want to engage the other inner geek in me, which is the engineering geek, to figure out, okay, well, there's this artistic mashup. What about combining that concept, which wasn't like fitting into any traditional established ruts of street rod or stock or pro touring or any of the ways that like people kept doing things. Same with the mechanical. Like I wanted the heated seats and the Brembo brakes and all the precision of, four-wheel independent suspension or whatever, all those perversions of modernity. But I wanted the longevity and sort of the man and machine deeper relationship that I think, same with your guys' world with home design and redesign. And there's just something about classic design languages that are just gonna, to me, they create longer, deeper relationships.
I think that
preaching.
Part of the kind of diving into this podcast was that I wanted to be able to dovetail and mesh what you do with what we do, and you're actually bringing that to the forefront of the conversation right now. And I think that it is so important, and it is very similar to what we do, where there's the classic stylings and the traditional design and architecture. And even if you're looking at contemporary, there's a long history of contemporary design, even though it may be called modern. But you can still have those traditional architectural stylings while bringing in the creature comforts, right?
Totally.
So you're getting the best of both worlds.
And the other thing that one of the reasons I was excited to and quickly accepted the invite to join this, I don't know if you guys know, I was already following 2 out of 3 of you. I was already following you guys on Instagram because of your craftsmanship and the way you look at it. And something that I've like preached about maybe too much, but like part of me is about the revival of the tradition of craftsmanship and give a shit in creation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this country and our education system and our government for years is like, I don't know, it's like I want to decriminalize blue collar because it's become like a dirty word or where the dumb kids are supposed to go, which is just such a travesty because that's how this country was built. And hey, I got plenty of clients who are plumbers, architects, roofers, whatever. So I think we need to figure out, and you guys are onto it, getting culture to not look at blue collar as less than, but like it's all about caring about what you do and really, you know, giving a damn. And it's just really bugged me that's been an issue in the modern narrative. I knew I'd screw it up, so I cheated and Googled it. And I kind of disagree with it, but I kind of like it as well. There's a quote that various sources attribute to either Louis Neisser or St. Francis of Assisi. But a man who works with his hands is a laborer. A man who works with his hands and his brain is a craftsman. But a man who works with his hands and his brain and his heart is an artist.
Mm-hmm.
I actually prefer the Japanese approach to that, which is if you're in the business or passion or both, ideally, right, of creation, it's about engaging all senses in doing what you do. So how that table saw smells, how it sounds, how it sees, how the touch is on the grain direction and the chamfering, and like it's elevating the end result by a deep, intimate care and by resisting the commoditization that's so predominant in, you know, track homes and whatever big box product and custom cars even for a lot, where it's just taking that extra time. You can just smell it, right? You can tell if someone gave a damn. Like there's layers of my vehicles that we've had people like 10 years later reach out and go, oh my God, I dropped my favorite pen and I had to take the seat out, and I was noticing this kick-ass Deutsche Tech 36-pin aerospace connector and the thermal wrap and the heat shrink and the anchor tether you guys were using. Is like, no one's ever going to see that. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm going to sleep better, you know? Like, that's what's cool. Like when you guys build something and someone's going to go in and do the smart home of the year upgrade. Don't get me started on smart homes. They're not smart. They're like Neanderthals. And mine is such a pain in the butt. Right? But when they blow out your drywall one day and they look back and see the details, like that's your heritage. That's a craftsman.
I want to touch on that, but you've mentioned the Japanese culture twice now. So is this something just recently when you visited last year, or is this something that you've, in your upbringing and your career, that you focus a lot back to the Japanese culture?
Well, I like to get out of my little box here in Los Angeles, where we're hemmed in by mountain ranges and generally crappy air quality, which I honestly think short circuits our vision of the world. And not just, I'm not picking on LA folks, but like globally, we get so occupied in our own little world, our neighborhood, our reality, our community, and we lose perspective. There's so many different ways of looking at your situation, your stress of the minute or whatever it might be, if you get out of your comfort zone and travel, you know. And I don't care if that's fancy pants traveling or that's Eurailing hostel to hostel, right? That's always been a big thing for me. I think my parents, we did not grow up wealthy, but, you know, we try and do a trip every couple of years, and, you know, it might just be Mexico or something, but it was never about like the resort all-inclusive buffet swimming pool. It was more about understanding and engaging in that culture. So I've always taken massive soul food out of those experiences, and I'd never gone to Japan until last year, but I'd always had a huge respect for their traditional craft. I've always been perplexed with there's an interesting dynamic, I think, in design in Japanese culture, where they're very hesitant to want to reference their history. They may reinterpret, like the joinery, let's say, or whatever, pick a craft, from indigo dyeing to even like traditional American leather craft, like Western tooling. Man, they're doing it today better than we ever did it, you might argue. And like some of the best master teachers that are still alive in like Sheridan tooling and stuff, they can barely fill a room at a Holiday Inn in North America doing a class. They're booked up 2 years in advance in Japan. So I think I wanted to understand that disconnect between being very forward focused and almost not really ashamed, but sort of didn't want to openly talk about their past. And it's an interesting topic because it turns out a lot of the design languages and process and art forms, and and even the written language in Japan actually is mostly Chinese. So I think that was part of it. I think World War II was a part of it, and a certain feeling of shame or defeat. But man, any country whose manhole covers, you're geeking out on, and like I'm walking around, not jaywalking because you don't do that there, but like I'm still going to get run over because my geeks, like I'm looking at the floor because the manhole covers are art, like just kick ass. Like, have you ever heard about that or seen them?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you should Google it. It started in Kyoto when they were actually trying to sort of do a PR campaign to get the public to understand the importance of spending more money in public works. So they made them artistic. And this continues throughout their culture, and even the most simplistic things. Like in our Thriftmaster pickups, we recently did a shushugiban, Japanese char finish wood on the bed wood. And I've been loving that forever. I was always looking for an excuse to dump it into a car. I was like, oh, I got it. Let's do that.
I always think about that, and I feel like it's becoming more popular. And there's companies in the U.S. that kind of replicate the Shisugiban, but it's just an interesting, it's a process by hand. But there's immense benefit from using that over, say, a paint or a stain,
Totally.
And it's just it kind of goes into this whole conversation, right? Where it's like products have been used to replace or replicate the traditional way of doing it. And you talk about the school in Japan that has a 2-year waiting list, where here you can't fill a room. And it's like, why, I guess you said you went there to figure out what the disconnect was. So I guess my question is, were you able to understand that? Were you able to get on the flight back to LA and say, now I understand why the Japanese culture respects, working with your hands, where US, I don't want to say it doesn't respect it, but has less respect for it?
Well, I think the US, it starts with schooling, because like kids today, I honestly feel that kids might even be led to believe by the education system that, God forbid if their school even actually has a wood shop or metal craft or any sort of hand trade craftsman-based schooling, it's disappearing at a frightening pace. But I think that's part of it. So kids are thinking that's not respectable, that's not a successful career path. But I mean, now in North America, I think we're starting to see that bite us in the butt, because like Watson's supercomputer is like 10 times more likely to answer a general law question more accurately than the top 5% of students graduating out of the top 5% of law schools. And now they're having a hard time finding a job. So I think that we're going to see that turn. And I think culturally it starts with the consumer, right? Having respect for paying a little bit more or allowing a little bit more time for someone to do it at a deeper, more permanent craft skill-based level. And, when I started Icon, like we were really scared because that really wasn't a thing, especially in trans. But over the years, I'm amazed, right? Like the renaissance, not just in North America, just globally, of consumers pushing back against the commoditized cheapest solution. Also on the opposite end of the spectrum, pushing back against branded luxury, which often is a veneer of marketing with a heritage brand logo. And beyond that, it's the same crap you could buy at the store. Like the authenticity isn't there. Man, I'm all over the place because I love what you guys are into. But like for me, Japan, I came back understanding that the next generation, the current generation, taking the helm of these multi-generational textile or wire weaving, mud dyeing, indigo, all these different crafts based, they are now putting their own mix on it and finding a way to keep it relevant. Because while it has been celebrated in Japanese culture, for a long time, it was generally a very private and domestic celebration, not an export-focused market. I mean, to this day, it blows my mind. There's so many guys, so many creators I follow on Instagram in Japan, they don't export. They don't even bother Google translating their website. Like, nah, we're good. We're happy right here. So maybe they don't have as much of the capitalist pig in them that we might, but the next gen, I think, is starting to look to grow that. But they're also fighting a mass exodus in Japan right now, moving to the urban centers. So they're incredible, like the Satoshi Islands in the south of Japan, where like these phenomenal neighborhoods, beautiful craftsmanship. Like the youngest person in these towns is like 60.
Wow.
Because they don't see a sustainable future for themselves there. They think they need to be in tech, they need to be in banking, they got to move to the big city and hop in the cubicle and find their way. And they're like our culture, like European cultures as well. I think they're starting to see a transition back to, no, I want to stay here, I want to stay in my community, I want to make this work, and I want to save this community. I want to prove its relevance and its potentials into the future.
It seems like, I mean, I know it's the case with us that, like you had just mentioned, people just aren't necessarily willing to spend the extra money for something. And I think that it's that they don't truly understand. And even in your industry, I can see how that's grown over the years where there's more people willing to pay for what you do. But I still think big picture, it's such a niche market that you've kind of gotten into where not everyone can afford these cars. And it's the same thing with what we do, where it's like, if you don't want it to be a commodity, but you want to see the industry grow. And it's just so difficult because there's just such a limited market of people who are willing to pay for that craftsmanship on a bigger scale, on something other than just a piece of furniture. When you get into an entire house or a full remodel or whatever it may be, it becomes, your market just shrinks.
I agree, but I would argue, like in my case, right? When we started Icon, other pro builders and friends in the industry were like, "You're gonna do what? How?" Like they didn't get it, and no one was really kind of doing it the way we were doing it, and they all thought we were crazy. Like the sort of multi-tenant space where we had our original like 1,100 square foot shop when I started. They even had a pool grease board going up, betting on which month we were going to go belly up.
Oh, Jesus.
But here we are today, and we're debt free. We're not killing it. We're not huge. But frankly, I'd argue that space of elevated craft, be it like y'all or like mine, it can't be for everyone, and that needs to be okay. Right. Because by the time it is for everyone, that means it must be commoditized. And as long as VC money and Wall Street are running the rules of big volume, that means you have to be ready to scale it, whore it, and sell out. So I would say that, yeah, I'm certainly not a threat to Toyota or Ford, and I never will be. But I'm totally down with, like, we have enough business that's fun. And now there's there's like a pretty significantly large community globally of goobers like us that have now come into the space and are doing well and supporting suppliers and families and like have viable businesses. So now, having just turned 50 this year and dealing with my wife's battle with breast cancer, I think I've come to a point where I am starting to try and entertain the shoulder.
Hold on,
He's back, yeah.
Okay. You were cutting out.
Pretty good. Yeah, I think my 18-year-old's probably hoarding the network right now. But I think you've got the capitalists, like, okay, we live in America. Are you going to play the game, or are you trying to build some net worth, some equity, a cushion, savings to help your kids start their dream business or care for your sorry ass as you get older, versus the creative, pure passion, art is for art's sake. And obviously doing what we all do, you have to find a balance between those two. Mm-hmm. I think my struggle or my shortcoming, if anything, has been that I've erred maybe a little too much on the stay true to my vision art form head, which is phenomenal because I sleep well and I dream about my projects. I wake up excited to get to work and do the projects. I mean, a craftsman, when his hobby is another craft, right? So like if I'm not at work crafting, I'm at home crafting, staying up late nights and weekends. But I am getting to that point where it's like, what am I doing and where is the measure? It's time to figure out as a businessman, where is the balance? How do I keep the purity of the core that makes Icon worth a damn and the fact that we are in business and there is demand? What is the product or service or widget or thingy I can come up with that doesn't make me a hoe, but gives me a more scalable business model to allow me to continue to protect the core and start making some real money? Mm-hmm. So I think that's sort of my current mental shuffle. And I've got a bunch of ideas and I'm already testing and exploring them, but that's sort of where I find my head going as an independent, as a business owner right now, is figuring out that balance. Like,
is that idea independent of Icon?
Some are, some aren't. I think the right ones are Icon branded, but they, you have to be careful. So like, for example, we've talked to the big car companies and they want to do an Icon edition. And we did it with one of the world's largest car companies, and we got very deep into it. I built a prototype. I presented it. By the time it went through the filters of the focus groups, which I loathe, to the board, to the design team, to the marketing department, in the end, it was like floor mats and trophy plaques and stickers. And then it's like, well, no. Like, yeah, that's a problem.
Decals.
Yeah, right. Then it's like the Eddie Bauer edition on a Ford Bronco. Like, okay, no, that would kill the brand. Mm-hmm. So I think the perfect world for me, I'd love to do Icon edition of modern vehicles that have the authenticity, the quality of our hand-built vehicles, but are way more cost feasible. Like, I'd love to start that. Well, I am going to start that actually with the 2021 Bronco release. So I'm going to do an Icon edition. Now, in a perfect world, I would like to do that with Ford. I'd like Ford to distribute it, market it, and just send me my pennies per sale and let them deal with the infrastructure required to develop and distribute that and dealer network. And because that just sounds like hell to me. But, mice and elephants don't always dance well together. And like my previous experience with another car company where it gets so watered down, I don't know if I can or I can't. I think it's going to really boil down to relationship and the singular vision of those in control in those corporate structures at whatever car companies we work with. But I'm just jumping in. I'm just going to do it with the Bronco. I got 3 on order anyway, so I'm going to geek out and do it to my own anyway. So I'll just start doing it and sell the cool stuff direct to retail. And then if Ford chimes in, better yet. And then like Jeeps, there's billions of them and there's so much plastic on them. I'm not the only guy who hates plastic. Car companies have to do it for pedestrian impact or just because they're cheap and want to save a few pennies. But the consumers love them some machined goodness, right? So I think that's the most linear opportunity. And I'm having to learn to like balance that, right? Because there's the linear on a spreadsheet, that makes sense, do that. But then there's the creative geek who's like, oh, but I'd really like to start a leather goods brand and, go off over here. So then I got to like kind of like reel myself in. My wife is my CFO. I have a magical COO. For many, many years, it was just my wife and I, from payroll to payroll, robbing Peter to pay Paul, on that capitalist treadmill for a good 15 years, having to do everything before we were finally at a point where I was able to start building a team, building a master alliance. So my COO can't sketch, can't design, can't build, like not his thing. But he can rock a spreadsheet and production audits and, efficiency charts, and that stuff makes me want to puke. But without him on the team, I would have screwed this up a long time ago. So we're kind of at that point where I've had the luxury of taking a lot of those different hats off and just keep the hats that I really like or think I'm good at. My wife handles logistics and billing. I get to geek out and stay in my little happy space while still trying to think of like product development and what makes sense from the big picture, while my COO makes sure it's a viable business. So I'm like, it's a juggle.
My question for you about your wife is, that position, does it make her happy or does it make the whole relationship work? You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like my wife would feel more comfortable having that hat. I just don't want her to have it.
That's a good question. I never thought of it that way. I mean, when we decided to start the first automotive brand, I mean, my career I hated, and she hated hers. And we were in South Africa on a 2-month vacation, and we didn't really think about it. But it was already, my deep hobby, and, as I said, I've been serial craftsman geeking and whatever platform forever. And it was more like she wanted to get out of her job. I wanted to get out of mine. We had what, from my hobby, proved to be significantly viable as a business, and there was a big demand for it, and there was no one in the space at that time. And so we just quit our jobs and did it. I think now, yes, she gets a little jealous that I get to do the fun stuff.
Right, yeah.
Which, you know what, in my defense, I'm constantly saying, hey, we got we wrote our management software, we hemorrhaged money doing that because there was nothing off the shelf for car dealerships or car repair garages or body shops that worked for us. It's taken a lot of the minutia out of her job that she doesn't have to be there every day. So I'm like, pick 2 days a week and geek out on your, indigo remnants and your tailoring ideas and stuff you want to do, and go for it, grow it. Why not? So I think that's on her. She's got the opportunity to do it, but I have learned, dare I ever, if she's not in for whatever reason, when she was going through chemo, we just got to keep the train on the tracks. So me and my COO and everyone, we're just kind of doing what we got to do. So I'll sell a car normally. I send my wife the configuration from the configurator on the website, notes from the conversation, contact info for the client, bill him, honey. and she does all the paperwork and boom, keeps it rolling. So normally like creative, and then I party on and I'm off to the next one, and that's on her lap. Well, we couldn't do that. So I'm like going through her computer, ruining templates, screwing up format. But hey, I got it done. I got the money.
Is she laundering any money? Did you find out?
No, I don't think I'd notice, because I mean, there's not much of a margin in this stupid business. But I think if I knew that already, but I got to stay in my lane, I think, especially with husband-wife business duos, right? The second I try and do what she does, I'll get my ass handed to me in a hurry. I'll welcome her into what I do. I'm a little bit more open about that. But the reality is, I don't think she has that sort of obsessive, compulsive, monocular focus on little shit for 3 hours that I do. So she'll just topically come in and say, that's ugly. I like that one. That's stupid. What are you thinking? You know, which is fine. It's all in the balance.
It's funny because I have conversations with my wife about those tiny little details that probably matter to no one. And it's just gotten to the point where I can tell that she's not listening to me, but she's pretending, and it doesn't really even matter to me because I need to get it off of my chest. Yeah. And like I know that she doesn't care, and she couldn't care, and she's just gonna tell me kind of what I want to hear, or look at big picture and give me her honest opinion, but I still do it anyway.
Same here. But you know, the crazy thing is my wife is like incredible sense of style and design, and like she's gifted in that way. So, but she doesn't have the attention span. So
for sure,
what she's famous for is not paying attention when I'm on all the minutia, right? She's like, oh, honey, yeah, whichever one you think's great. Yeah, that's great. No, I love that one, whatever. She's kind of like just mentally just like, okay, just let him vent. And then I finish it, and then she has like deep judgment. Like, what are you doing? I gave you your time to vote. Now you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, you need that. You need that earlier in the process.
I would appreciate it a little earlier in the process, but at the same time, like the companies, because of me having that space, and you know, I've got a design engineer, mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, and my dedicated teams for each group or class of vehicles that we build. It's sort of like a monarchy with the veneer of democracy, because no one does have that level of geekness of patience. So I'm kind of allowed autonomy to really get into that stuff. And, you know, it'll depend on the clients, right? Some clients want to be involved in every little decision. Other clients are like, man, I got a country to run. And you know, like, you're good at what you're good at. I'm good at what I'm good at, which is why I'm able to hire you and pay for you to do what you do. So just do it. Do it like you're going to, my favorite is when they say, build it like you're going to keep it. Good news. I'm down with that.
What was it like when you first started getting those customers? Was it like, holy crap, this is what we've been wanting to do? Was it a surprise, or were you like, finally? Like a sigh of relief?
Well, I mean, Icon was a big leap of faith. By the way, should we even back up? I mean, your audience, they don't know who the hell I am, probably.
They don't know who we are either, so it's fine.
All right. So the first company was called TLC, and it's tlc4x4.com. It still exists, and it's sales, service, restoration, parts, and engine conversions specifically for Toyota Land Cruisers. And I used to be like super opinionated, dead stock, maybe better brakes, softer suspension, a modern stereo, but like, you want a V8, go, like, you hack, you know, it's very, but over time, the engineer in me, again, as I referenced earlier, was super interested in looking into that, but doing it a different way than I'd seen people doing it for decades, because it was basically a list of trade-offs, you know? And I think there were new ways to do it, but people were kind of stuck in the rut of tradition and not trying new ways. But with TLC, we slowly grew and found a customer base really just out of luck, because that brand started right around the time the internet started. So like, I think it was the 5th or 6th FJ40 I ever sold. some guy was saying, would you consider a trade? Which generally no, because we had no money. But I got a smoking deal on that truck, so I had a huge margin. So I'm like, well, what you thinking? He's like, have you ever heard of the internet and these like websites? I'm like, yeah, I heard about that. It sounds interesting. That's got promise. And he's like, well, I'll design you a website if you'll trade me for that truck. So I was like, And brilliant, right? Luck, not brilliant, just good old lucky. Because that allowed me to stay very sniper rifle specific about what it is we did or didn't do, but we were suddenly able to reach such a wide audience that we were able to stick to them. And that was critical. And then, one thing led to another. Toyota dealership owners for their own collection or for the dealership floor would commission a resto. Word ended up getting to Mr. Toyota, and his office called the shop. And I still remember, like, our little Motorola's in the shops. He's like, Mr. Toyota on line 1. And I'm like, oh, please. I didn't even know there was a Mr. Toyota. So I pick up the phone, and it was like God called the church. It was nuts. So he scheduled a visit and came out to meet with me because, and you know what? I just figured this out. That was the beginning of my curiosity about Japanese culture, especially Japanese business culture. He thought we collectively, all us cruiser heads, especially my company, we're out of our minds. You guys are taking apart old Toyotas, putting them back together? Why? Who would want that? Like, moving forward, and all the slogans over the year, the corporate slogans, they mean it. Like, in Japanese business culture, you never talk about your past successes. It's like a big no-no. It's always the future, building up. So I think he came to visit originally just to try and get his head around the fanatic following that the Land Cruiser has in America and arguably more so in Australia and other nations, but that the Japanese culture just couldn't get their head around. So that turned into him commissioning me building and designing first one and then a series of 3 pre-production prototypes of what eventually became the FJ Cruiser. But again, that went back into their standard development cycles, and it turned into what it was, which isn't what I had in mind. It was more sort of an anime, retro, Xboxy sort of thing, which is, was a cool truck, but it left me yearning to realize what I had in my head that I couldn't do because of all the mandates from Toyota. So when I started Icon, it was literally because I had built this like imaginary 3D model in my head, and it was keeping me up at night. And it was getting to the point I had to get it out of my head and onto the street. I had to actually build it to keep my sanity. So I actually went back to Mr. Toyota and a couple members of the board and explained, I have this idea for a brand. I want to call it Icon, and I want to celebrate designs from the past in a modern context. So it's never like, remember those? Yeah, they sucked, but aren't we cool? It's those were incredible, but let's make those relevant to the modern taste and user window, right? So got Toyota's sort of subtle nod of approval to do so, and I just built it. I just took every bit of spare change I had and built it and went back and added up what it cost to build and had a huge frightening moment of, this will never work. No one's going to spend that. Going back to your question, like people are not going to get it. And I did a lot of soul searching and asking people smarter than me with really good brand experience, and decided to stick to the vision and present it and hope to build an audience. So it was a huge risk. The cool thing is the people who've actually engaged in it, they've pushed us to go way crazier over the years. Mm-hmm. So like our price points more than doubled because the audience that engaged never wanted the cheapest. They wanted the most capable, the most elevated, the most thoughtful version we could create. And that's been like pretty much a dream as a brand, right? I never had to like make compromises or sacrifices or do good enough they won't notice decisions.
Do you think that initially when you said nobody would pay for this because your context was a market who was doing a different type of restoration and just a different type of customer at that point? Because the reason I ask, I look back at the beginning of my career where you're doing a bathroom for a certain amount of money and then you hear another number and you're like, well, nobody would ever pay for that. And in my mind, none of my previous customers would pay for that, but there were people out there who were willing to pay for it. It was just a market that I was completely unfamiliar with and had never tapped into.
I think I had to build it for them to understand it. So I'm very happy now in retrospect that I bit the bullet and created it and got it out of my head and realized, because otherwise, I mean, don't get me wrong, right? It's all about educating and storytelling. And that's been plenty of a battle as we've grown the company. But I don't think it would have ever gotten rolling from a rendering and a press release or me tap dancing on a telephone trying to communicate to someone what something could be. So I think that was a critical step, was actually having it at least executed as a starting point, as a communication tool to then be able to build a market. But I mean, really, at that time, you'd have like the Riddler, Amber Award, Pebble Beach, super high-end restorations or customizations, but it wasn't about drivability. It was about authenticity or pure art. And they're trailer queens. Mm-hmm. So that was a tiny market that's shrinking in many aspects or respects. But I wanted the usability. I wanted to stick to the utility roots of these vehicles and elaborate and expand on that, and then build that market. So I just think we kind of got lucky. And I kind of remember it took a good 8 years of like when big automotive outlets would do features and you'd online, and you'd look at the comments section, and I was just getting my butt handed to me again and again and again. Oh, this guy, now I could build that for 20 grand. He's dreaming. Those damn Californians, that guy must live on an island with a jet. It's like, they just weren't getting it. And rule number 1, don't engage with trolls. Took me a while to learn that one, because it is so from the heart and so honest that like I did take it personally, and I still do. So man, I'd log in and go, you got it wrong. And I'd start teaching it. Just like, okay, I cherish the day when suddenly, before I did or even had to try to stop my hand from going towards the keyboard, seeing that so enough people knew the brand and what we stand for and get it. Even if they can't afford it, they get it and they respect it. They became our ambassadors, our tribe, that helped educate the consumer and keep that ball rolling.
Yeah, it's crazy how important that is, and how much of when you're looking to transition or don't even realize that you're transitioning, how much effort has to go towards educating your consumer. And then the goal is to get to that point where you don't have to do that, where the people come to you and they already know what they're getting. And you don't have to sell that at that point. I feel like I'm not there. I'm working to get there, but there are customers who come to me who want us, and I still find myself in that perpetual habit of selling what we do and why it's different. And they're like, no, we understand. That's why we came to you. And I'm not used to that. That's
difficult, right? Because you can never read, especially wealthy consumers, you can't read that book by its cover. No way in hell. This time more than any, right? Like I've had dudes coming off the street driving like a nondescript, like could be a gardener's truck, in jeans, flip-flops, and a t-shirt, who then reach in their backpack and pull out a cash deposit and it's on, right? Versus I've had guys come in with like escort armadas who are just puffing smoke and full of it and never are clients. So the challenge I think that you're probably dealing with, and I suppose I'll always deal with, even after that point if people get it and they understand it, is especially on the highest end, my one-off, the derelict and reformer customs that we do that are pretty much a one and done lineup of inefficiencies, is that one tiny decision can have a 5-digit, 6-digit, in some cases, impact in the build. The first guy who says, oh, that's really cool, could you do that for me? All he wants is yes or no, and move on. Problem is if you assume the next guy just wanted a yes or a no and you say yes and you move on, then he shits a brick when, oh, that articulating taillight assembly to hide the gas cap to clean up the lines of the side of the vehicle. What do you mean that was 190 hours in engineering and emulation? What do you mean that was $2,500 in SLA 3D prints and test and McMaster car? God love McMaster car, right, guys? It's the coolest company.
Not
and
sponsored.
I pay them liberally. They don't pay me. They should be a sponsor for you guys. They're amazing. Right? But people don't realize what it goes into realizing those things, especially if it's a one and done and you're not amortizing it over like my production units where I have the luxury of amortizing it over hundreds of units. So I find that a very delicate balance because the thing I hate the most in my business is financial strife. Clients freaking out over a bill, or that's not what I agreed to, or myself, my project managers not clearly documenting or communicating. So stressful. So like we're super anal about that now. But that often starts with me explaining to the client up front, okay, when you say stuff like that, please understand in this world what it means. And you can tell me right now if you totally get it and you're down for it. And quite frankly, if you have the faith that it's not about the money, it's about the highest execution we can achieve, and you respect that we respect your money in that context, or if every one of those decisions is a financial based element for you. And frankly, to a point, if that is a serious driver, I'm not the right builder.
Yeah, that's exactly what was going through my head.
Yeah, and that took me decades, right? And my wife is a bit more of a ball buster. She's the one who encouraged it and actually led me to firing a client for the first time after like 18 years in business. Best thing I ever did. I've only done it twice. Now I'm more careful in the beginning before I even accept the job. But sometimes you can just tell like they don't get it, or like you guys probably suffer from the same reality show viewer syndrome of what do you mean the house is going to take a year? I watched such and such, and this is done in a month. It's beautiful. I'm like, yeah, have you seen it a month later? You driven that car? Like, oh my God, what a train wreck, right?
John, that's actually I wanted to go back to that because earlier in Tyler you kind of talked about how the money aspect of it and the client not valuing that or not, wanting to spend that much money. But the time thing, and I think for me, I feel as though that's almost a bigger issue where it's like, you just started touching on it, and that's why I stopped you, is, where the money is kind of one of those, the financial talk and about how much stuff costs sucks. Like, I just wish it was just like a non-issue. And I feel as though I would much rather take it on the chin, for a couple $100 here and there and, and deal with the fact that maybe we don't make as much money on a project.
Careful though. You do that too long, you don't have a business. Because I ate it. I lost my ass on jobs for a long time because of that.
100% agree. But the flip side is, I guess, in comparison to time, and what I mean by that is, and John, you and I have talked about it and went back and forth. It's like, I just wish people gave us the amount of time that it took, where it's like, you need to understand this is the first time we're doing this. You're asking for, the utmost execution by us, and it's like, we can't, like, don't then add this, unnecessary burden of it needs to be done in X amount of days, where it's like every day after that is just, a negative, red X.
Are you done yet?
Right.
I was yelling, not yelling, but I was ranting at Jeff Bezos about that recently. I'm like, dude, the prime culture has screwed my world.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks they can get everything, anything, same day delivery. I'm like, you're killing me, man.
Can we just clarify, were you talking to him personally?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
Jeez. Yeah.
the
That makes it way better.
yeah, it was.
I thought he was on TV and you were yelling at a screen.
Yeah, that's what I was.
You idiot! No, it was pretty wild story. It was very cool, and I think that is an ongoing struggle that none of us have gotten past, and I'd argue maybe that's getting worse, is time and money. Because even if you get past the time, I mean, even if you get past the money, you don't get past the time with the moneyed people.
Right. And I think as money increases, that time decreases, or the patience for the time decreases.
Yep.
But hold on, I don't want to skimp over this Jeff Bezos conversation. When's
McMaster car gonna have Prime?
That
Right?
would make it better. But what was his reaction to your comment? Like, what's his outlook on it?
His outlook is, I'm killing it, and I revolutionize commerce, and I've created all these opportunities for brands and consumers, especially during COVID. So, yep, is what it is. They just started a new initiative, though. What's it called? Amazon Handmade or Amazon Craft. Like, they're giving a good hard poke in the eye at Etsy and getting into and trying to create a space for independent makers and craftsmen and artists to have a platform, which I think is quite interesting. But I first was exposed to Amazon. They had me come up and do a keynote speech years ago to one of their lead creative teams in the U.S. About passion and product, because they were, even back then, I don't remember, but it's got to have been a good 8 years ago, trying to figure out how to not negate that and how to figure out how to support those values within their culture, which I respect. And yeah, it was pretty wild.
I wanted to go back, Nick. I thought you were going to go a total different direction with time and money and all that, where it was like opportunity cost on our end, where, John, you were just saying about this client that you had to fire. I just had this conversation with my wife in the kitchen before we jumped on this, and I'm like, without an abundance of opportunity coming your way that do fit your mold, meaning the right budget, the people that care about the story and they want to go through the process, where, Tyler, you don't take it for granted. I think that's special about you, is that they already know what they're getting, but you're still going through that process, because that's what the other people that heard about this, that's what they heard about, was like that cool process. That's what you take us through. And I think losing that kind of passion behind the process, where I always joke about, like, I'm a superhero. I get to see through walls. Like, before it all gets pretty, we're walking through walls and seeing through them. And I don't ever want to take it for granted that so they've hired me because of this, and I'm gonna go through the motions, or I'm gonna put a PM on this, and I'm not gonna be there. It's about that special part. But Nick, I was thinking about the client that we've gotten like 4 or 5 calls that are really great budgets, that are really great products, and you know what? Like, I'm sitting back going, I'm not gonna flood my company with a couple PMs. Not a shot at you, Nick. Nick hires a bunch of people, but it's like, how do I do this? And I've had a client.
You have to, but it's so hard. We struggle with that. It's so hard to delegate and hire and build the team, or then you have to pick the projects. The one thing I would encourage, from my experience, which is relevant but weird, unique, but even to all our listeners who are craftsmen, is that I think it's important when you're talking about budgets and money, if you can communicate from the angle of passion for consideration and detail and craftsmanship and tradition and the art form of it, it makes it a hell of a lot more digestible to the kind of person you want as a client. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that may end up trimming the herd, but like you said, you can't, your business isn't eminently scalable. It's like when I started, if I didn't trade that truck for a website and I just had like A-frame signs on the street offering free brake inspections just to get people to come in to fill the rack, to pay the bills, I think I'd either still be out of business, or if I was in business, I'd be a bitter bastard hating what I do because I had to follow what the market said they wanted. Like Henry Ford said once that, by the way, that quote of, you can have your car any color you want as long as it's black, that wasn't Henry Ford, that's BS. But Edsel gave me this super cool little quote book of real Henry Ford quotes. And one of my favorites was, if I listened to the people when I was designing the first Ford about what they wanted in their mode of transportation, they would have said they wanted a faster horse that doesn't shit. So at a certain point, you have to respect your own vision, right? And then position yourself, as you guys have done, somewhat pioneeringly in your space with your respect for how to use social media as a tool to communicate your differentiating factors and your passions and your detail and craft. If you let it build as slow or as difficult or money losing on a couple jobs as that might be in the beginning, it creates such a strong foundation that long term you're doing work you're proud of for the best clients who totally get it. I mean, we all end up with nightmare clients. It's a reality, right? Mm-hmm. We all end up hating certain jobs, or some jobs are the albatross. We call them the shop albatross, like the job that just won't leave the shop, just can't get it gone. But big picture, right? I think if you stick to the passion of it and you work extra hard in communicating and telling story with both your own crew and your clients, that's the only way to pave the road long term to take you to a happy place.
So true. I just, the example I was giving about the client is I've been in a relationship with them. I say that for a year almost. They bought a property that they probably don't listen to this. Bought a property that had historic weight. So we've had to wait a year, and they've done this design. And as I've gotten to know them, I'm ignoring flags that are going up, and I'm like, oh, well, it's because I'm at a point where I've been in such a relationship with them for so long. It's like my wife said to me, can you really back out of it now? We haven't built anything. We're getting into the permit phase now because we're waiting for the 1 year delay for historic. And I'm like, with everything, it makes you realize when these good opportunities come that you're like, it's almost like your first girlfriend you've ever had. And you're like, oh, I loved her. It's like, you didn't know what love was. Like until it really hit. And I'm like, I've had a nightmare client, and I apologize to my guys. We're like, I need to do a better job of vetting this so you're not exposed to this.
Right.
That's our number one thing is like, I need to be the kind of the overview, the screener that says, I'm not going to corrupt everything we have and then let this virus into my group.
Oh yeah, ruin your shop culture. Oh, disaster.
Everything. So now I'm like, we had an experience with asbestos, and we had to do this deep dive on it. And I was like, man, you think it was that one-off situation where they went on a deep dive and we had to get 3 quotes and we were right the whole time? Where like they got an asbestos quote, we got it for my guys, and it was $28,000 to do the asbestos abatement. And they're like, well, that's crazy, blah, blah. We brought in a guy I met him there, and it's like a broken down Civic, no lettering on the truck, and
Hall, and crayon in the back window with his cell phone.
Shirt that like his buttons are not aligned, like he just woke up. And I'm like, this is who we're giving credit to for the process that we're having to then re-quote everything. And then furthermore, we had to go to the DEP to kind of override these 2 quotes. And then the client turns to me and goes, do you think we can hire, Joey because he put all the effort in? I'm like, do you realize that's his game? His game is to come in, quote something and find something that undermines the original quote, that gets him in the door, that then you think he's bringing value. And now you want to repay him because the effort he put in. And the reality is the same effort was done in a methodical way that was dialed in, and it just looks like it was just cut and run from the first guy because it's just what they do every day, 10 times a day.
But John, are you saying the red flags that you're seeing are the way the client is looking at that scenario, whereas you thought they were the dream client, you had them trained, they understood your perspective?
Well, I think I may have been overlooking like what was really there. Like then we sat down and I'm like, the fact that we got the DEP and I talked to the people that did the asbestos testing at the lab to be like, hey, how accurate can this be?
That's your state, what, Department of Environmental?
Yeah, exactly.
Protection?
Yeah. So and like I had to talk to the lab and be like, hey, how accurate is this? How many times have you guys had a missed test where something came? So we had basically one area tested. This guy in the Civic came back where it was negative. Our guy came back positive, and that was basically all the stucco on the outside of the house. It's a big area. And the lab was like, no, this is what, we've never had this. And I'm like, all right. Then I talked to the DEP and they're like, no, they're a valued lab. The other guy's lab is whatever. So my point is like, I sat with them on the front porch after this whole thing went down. And I'm like, I've never out of 45 houses done a deep dive on this, like this deep. And then the husband's like, you should have seen her this is me looking back hindsight. He's like, you should have seen her at the wedding. Like when they organized their wedding, like she was like kind of overriding the people that were like planning the wedding and the flowers. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know about this. Like
red flag, red
exactly.
flag.
So I'm like, but now it's the point, like my wife says, you're in so deep, when do you pull the plug? And I'm like, I didn't start building anything. Like,
well, now's the time then.
Yeah.
But I would say now's the time to sit down and tell them how you valued them when you met them and how we're on the same page. But understand there's delays, infrastructure, bureaucracy, historic, like welcome to the real world. But I want to make sure you guys understand that's outside of my control. And more importantly, I want to make sure that you understand who I am, what my team is all about, what drives us, and you understand my perspective. Yeah. Because if I focus just on this asbestos situation, here's how I see it. But the reality is, if you guys value my judgment and respect my honesty and how well we're working together, then I need you to understand that, yes, you can hire the local I-haul guy and he can say one thing, but we're doing this in a professional, proper approach. And it's not that I'm charging you more and we're both using the same. That guy's using a hack lab that's going to bite you in the ass when you ever go to sell the house or if people get sick. Like, give them one more reframe, reality check. Let's get centered before we move forward. Or are you guys burned out and over it, and is the process sort of taking away all your passion and patience?
Hey guys, I know we don't usually do this, but I want to take a minute to introduce the Ask This Old House podcast from the Emmy-winning PBS series that has inspired generations of home enthusiasts. Each week, the trusted experts at Ask This Old House share exceptional home improvement advice with homeowners from around the country. On this week's episode, Emily and Bobby from Fairfield, Connecticut asked general contractor Charlie Silva how to fix an incorrectly installed bedroom door. To hear about this project as well as weekly tips and tricks from our pros, subscribe to the Ask This Old House podcast for free wherever you get your podcast. Now back to the show.
It's tough because, like, I remember when they called me, like, they're like, well, we could use the other lab. And I said to them point blank, I'm like, you have kids. Like, if we do the abatement and we only abate the inside and you demo this house, it's going to get in the soil. Like, what are you willing to save $11,000 and then your kids be exposed to asbestos in the yard? Is this really what you want to do right now? That was the conversation we had. And it was just, I guess my point is that for a year, I've helped them select properties, found the right ones, got them through the design, all this stuff. So I feel like the merit is already there that I've put in. I don't charge anything for that. Like, it just, I'll make these meetings and you kind of slide in and I slide it into pre-con. And it's like, the goal is that we make money off of building the house. You know, overall, that's where, whatever, like you say, the little margin that's there. So it's like, there's a lot of people in this industry now that make a lot of money on the design end. Like, oh, we're gonna pound a ton of hours in this, and then clients have the problem where then they're stuck with this design that they've paid $100,000 for.
Right, they're $100,000 into a SketchUp tour just to find out it's unbuildable.
Yeah, and then they have this, so it's like, I don't want to go through that, but I thought I had put enough in that this didn't have to happen. That's who I guess I'm stuck on. And now that I'm looking back at it, since I've had time, since we've been waiting for this delay through the town that we all knew about, it just, I'm like, you know what, man? I don't know if I want to put John, my PM, through that. Like, if I can handle it, I get it, but it's going to burn so much time.
That's
and
rough.
I'm like, having this conversation with them and the chances that it could be a one-off, I just feel like there's other opportunities. So I guess my whole point of that is, like, how do you know when you had to fire your first? Like, I feel like I'm there, but
yeah, I think it's time for a little powwow. But to answer your question with my deep assumed brilliance, you never know. I mean, I have a in my career, I've not finished 2 projects I committed to complete. One, because I let the client drive the design, and I kept my mouth shut about the things I knew were foundationally bad ideas that meant it was going to suck. And then that's the lesson I learned from that, is not to be that guy, right? And fortunately, that ended up where the project got to a point and the client was man enough to own that, right? And say, you know what, you're right about the few things I had mentioned. We shouldn't have done that in steel. We should have done that in aluminum. We should have paid for extrusions, because now it's so damn heavy, it's not viable, right? So I got out of that one, close call. But right now I'm in a situation where, they're doing this exciting 7-digit project. And that's the other thing I've learned. It's not about your project budget. Like, often the most expensive total cost projects are the least profitable. Like, they're brain drain, energy craft suckers, versus if I had built 20 of the Icon Broncos, it would have been a better business in that time frame versus $1 million car. Like, the math doesn't make sense. So again, it's that battle of art and business. But this project's taking too long. We had a partner in Europe that was doing the body design and execution, and they were like 1.5 years over budget. So by the time the vehicle came back to me for me to start my biggest body of work, I got the client emailing me things like, we E-coated it, which you can't do in the US, but it's like a full submersion, electrostatic powder coat. It's kick-ass, but the US EPA won't let it go down. But anyway, so it's like a gray primer. The client literally, when I sent him the next round of budget, so I was rarely wise in structuring myself as a consultant up till then. Because I knew, not that I didn't trust the European partner, but I had no control. So I'm like, you know what? Why don't you contract directly with those guys? They seem great. And I'll be a consultant for hourly fee and travel. And I'll guide it so that it's compliant with what I need. So we engineered the chassis, built the chassis, rolling assembly, put it on a plane, sent it to Italy. So my work's done and I'm paid. Then I'm just a consultant. Now their work's done, it comes back 1.5 years late. The client sends me 2-line email in response to my elaborate proposal for the finishing budget and says, well, the gray doesn't look bad. Do we have to paint it? This needs a diet. And it's like, dude, are you $1 million+ custom vehicle and you want me to leave the E-coat primer? No, like, wait a minute. And it was one of those red flag moments of ding-a-ling, ding, 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 ding. This guy his heart is no longer in it. For whatever reason, it took too long. He was sneaking it by his wife, and she got wind of it, and she's pissed. Or he's building a new dream house, or building a yacht, or whatever. He's moved on. But I was super worried about it. Like, here forward, this is gonna be hell. And I pulled out. I sent him an email and said, you know what? This really only works well one way. If we love to be doing what you want us to do, and you love that we're doing it for you, you already are over it. The passion's gone, the patience gone, and you're already making guiding decisions for me to cut back on the quality of my work beyond where I am comfortable putting my name on. Like, no, I didn't spend decades to build a team and train everyone to care about every little detail to say, oh no, we're going to do this one not as nice. Like, it doesn't work like that. I don't even have a contract with a guy. Now he just sued me for the entire, like $500,000, the entire cost of the entire project, even the contract that has nothing to do with me. And I'm quickly realizing I've never been sued before. Well, I had one weirdo client try not pay a bill and complain against Bureau of Automotive Repair, and I ended up taking her to small claims because I was and am honest, and I was straight. And I got my record swiped clean with Bureau of Automotive Repair and got a judgment against her. And that's like 30 years ago, 25 years ago. I have never had a legal problem. Now I'm quickly realizing it's about whose ego is more bruised and who has a bigger war chest. It's not even about who's right or wrong. So now I have this massive gray cloud to deal with that, unfortunately, like, he could just bat me around like a cat playing with the mouse. So it's difficult. But I'd already done a project with him. I'd never had any problem. We got on great. Something shifted. And even though I did what you're now considering, it's like, then you get sued for the last year that you didn't charge them for. So no good deed can go unpunished sometimes. But yeah, man, keep those little radar poles up at all times.
I feel
so
like
critical.
Any time that I had a job within the past year where going into it through the design phase, like towards the end, I was like, yeah, this really doesn't make sense. But same thing, John, I had a design retainer, so it was a certain amount of money, but not enough to really cover how much time we put in. It was just to kind of like lock that client in. And it got to the point where I didn't have anything in my schedule, and I wanted to walk from the job and didn't, and ended up going through with the job. And it was just everything that I had thought happened. And it's like, I wish I had said no from the get-go and kind of stuck to my gut, but I'd positioned myself that I almost couldn't back out or back away from it. And it still was like a pain in the butt.
Don't you hate that you're ethical? Isn't it a pain in the butt that you, like, I'm old school East Coast Southern. Like, my word is everything.
Yeah.
I've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars to honor my word. I've honored my word at significant personal cost, whatever, emotional, financial, etc. But if I don't have that, who am I? What am I? Right? And it can be heartbreaking.
The toughest part is that you're going to sit there no matter how terrible that client treats you. I'm still sitting there giving them my 110%, doing my best work because it's not really about them at that point. And I'm almost resentful because I'm like, I'm pouring everything I have into this, and it's for someone that I really feel like doesn't even deserve this. But I just don't have the ability to just be like, screw it. You know what? Contractually, it doesn't say that this has to be done to this level, but that's just who I am. So I continue to do it and continue to overbuild and do the extra things that I'm not necessarily getting paid for, even though I probably don't want to.
Yeah, it's definitely a big struggle, and I think that's going to be a perpetual balance. And I wish if there was a book to read on that, someone please recommend it to the four of us.
Seriously.
We're on it, but I haven't found it. But I think, again, it's about respecting your gut from day one.
Yeah, I agree.
Literally,
It's
that's
so true.
I was going to say that first handshake and eye contact, but I guess now we're just left with eye contact. We don't
Fist
get the
bumps,
handshake
maybe
judgment.
fist bumps.
Elbows.
I won't even play the fist bump, elbow bump. I'm all about, like, literally hiring people, same deal. Get these resumes, this trade school, I can build anything, blah, blah, whatever. Or you get a guy who walks in who's never done anything professionally remotely relevant, but it's what drives him. It's what's in his garage at home. It's what he does with every spare moment he has. And if he walks or she walks in with the right handshake and eye contact and commitment and self-presentation skills, it's more than anything.
It's a slam dunk. You're right.
Yeah.
I want to hear. So, John, I mean, I'm sure that John, you've told him that you're a fan of the Broncos, right?
I may have.
May have led on to that at some point.
Yeah.
So we have a vendor that we work with a lot who's actually sponsoring the podcast, but they wanted to make sure that everyone knew Ryan at Kukin Brothers got the Bronco before John did. So he basically wanted to pick up this podcast so that he could say that. John still doesn't have a Bronco, right?
Nope, I don't.
But you're probably...
So you better be careful, John, about when you get that Bronco. You better give like an international scout or something so you don't lose that sponsor.
Yeah, I don't really know too much about them, so I can't
Or let's get you a McMaster car, and then you have a bidding war over sponsors.
That's true.
That'd be hard.
But so one of our sponsors and everything else, I feel like we're pretty selective with them. Kukin Brothers, which you may not be familiar with, but they do... I feel like they do a lot of what we do, where they're producing period correct molding lines to kind of fit that classic styling, the traditional architecture, where they're not putting out, it would be very easy to just sell miles of stock molding, but they're actually looking into catalogs and pattern books from 200 years ago and reproducing a lot of those moldings to match what was in homes before. They are shipping stuff around the country now, I feel like, which has been the Instagram and everyone getting the word out with them.
And that revival of Give a Damn, right? They're riding that coattail too. That's great.
John has it in his house right now. But I also feel like he hopped on board with this podcast because he feels very much that what they do is in line with what you do, which I'm sure, we all have the same mindset, where it's taking those classic details, those stylings, modernizing them. They're running stuff out of primed finger jointed poplar now, which brings the cost down. It creates a really good product, but it's kind of tuning it to today's standards and hitting a price point where he can market that to a lot of people rather than just a very elite part of society.
So that's that balance, right, of craftsman and businessman, where he didn't compromise the craftsmanship. He found a way to make it relevant and marketable and viable, and that's critical.
Exactly.
We worried about that significantly with my brand. That was a big thing.
And I feel like it gives the opportunity for people who are getting into this to kind of integrate details into their job or their product that they can stand behind, but also that are period correct. And I feel like you're really doing your job and your customers a solid. So I do want to thank Ryan for sponsoring the podcast. That's Kukin Brothers. And it is nice to have people kind of in line with what we believe and what we're doing. And they've always been somebody who's backed what we've done.
Well,
I mean, he named us. He named us the Modern Craftsman.
Oh, he's the guy who invited you guys to do that, whatever speech
the
or whatever,
OG.
the round table. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Just for giggles, I don't know. I curse a lot, so I keep trying to stop myself. I don't know what your policy is. You guys have been so proper. McMaster.com. For those of you that don't know, McMaster Car is one of the most incredible resources for every possible fixture, widget, subcomponent, spring, base, footing, joint, screw, nut, bolt, washer you could ever imagine. And their cataloging system online is absurdly detailed. And then, like, even when I drill down and out-geek their system, if you call them, there's actual, like, people that know what the heck they're doing and engineers that pick up the phone and say, well, I really like that one crown nut, that castle nut, but I want it with a compression tip. I want it JIS, and I'd like a shorter acorn on the head. And they'll literally go research it and come back to me and go, okay, yeah, no problem. We found that, yeah, you might have to order 5,000 of them or whatever. But like the resources and quality and depth and breadth of that company, for all you builders, if you didn't know what we were geeking on earlier, now you know. And McMaster, that's your last free sponsor on this podcast. You guys need to hop in and get on it, because this is your audience. This is the future.
I agree. Especially that you need the JIS on that nut and not just the standard Phillips.
That's right.
That's Japanese. You're bringing in Japanese, right?
Industrial standard.
See?
Very good.
It's coming full circle.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a sidebar story about a Bronco. When I was in my last house in Malden, my first house, and before we did our kitchen, I had basically shut down my company. I had an aluminum trailer that I had that I bought for like $7,000, and it was still, I had fitted the whole thing out, had it, and I was selling it because I was becoming a PM. So I sold it and I had $7,000 in cash, and I was like, I'm getting a Bronco. So my first truck, when I was going to get a license, I drove by an International Scout in Stoughton, over in Nick's hometown, and I drove by it, had no roof, didn't even come with a roof. Okay, and I drove by and they're like, how much? I'm like, how much? And they're like, $3,000. I'm like, I'm gonna go home and get $3,000 and come back. I drove from Stoughton to Walpole back. The guy sold it, and I was like, oh. So I've been chasing it ever since, and then I fell more in love with Broncos, early Broncos. So I was like, this moment happened where I was like, I got a real job. I'm making a salary. They gave me a company truck. All these things that checked the box off, and I don't think, God, I don't know where I was with. No, we had just had Hunter, so it was like I was like, all right, I got this. So I grabbed the buddy, grabbed $7,000, and I found a Bronco that was in like Maryland. So I drove to Maryland with my buddy, and I was like, if I like it, I'm gonna get a U-Haul trailer and grab it. And I was like, I didn't know enough about cars then. I still don't. That I was on like Bronco Graveyard on that site, and like I was, talking with people back and forth, and one guy was like, hey, just text me photos. So I'm literally at this guy's house in Maryland underneath the truck, like poking holes and taking photos and sending them to this guy. And he was giving me his feedback as I'm rolling around underneath this truck. So it turns out that I had to tell this guy, no, I can't buy it. Not because I didn't love the truck. I test drove it, oil and gasoline, like the exhaust was broken, so it was filling the cab. I was ready to pass out, and I loved every second of it. And I drove back, and the guy, I pulled up on the driveway, and the guy's like, hey, did you take it off road? I'm like, no. He goes, get back out there. And like he sent me back out in like the woods. And so I looked at it all, and I'm like, hey, I would love to buy this truck. I really would, but I wanted to be a daily driver. And I go, I literally can't afford to buy this truck and then take it home and put it in a garage and tinker with it, because I don't know how. Like, all the kickers were gone. Everything was rusted out. And it was just too much work that I was probably going to spend another $8,000 that I didn't have or the time. And I drove home empty-handed. And ever since then, it's
tail between your legs.
No, but the whole drive home.
Did you get it?
Yeah. and I talk. All my friends know that this is like my whole life. And I was like, you know what? The whole drive home was like, dude, you just had a kid. You need a kitchen more than you need anything else. So I made the right call. So now, ever since then, no matter how well I've done, whether it's a product or in life, I'm like, now it's like, until my kids go to college, it won't be. There's always that one thing that the family needs before that happens. So now I'm like, when I do finally get it, everyone will know that like the earth is like running smooth and everything's like in place. And
that's funny. I think like when you're doing a restoration on a home, you can buy a complete tramp of a house with great shape and land, right?
Good bones,
and do it up. With vehicles, a lot of time I think people misunderstand the process, and they buy the cheapest example they can find as their start. And it's not until they're done that they realize they spent way more time and money than they would have having bought the nicest original Virgin they could find and restoring it. Like, that first expense is far more critical versus coming in cheap and not anticipating.
But I think experience, it's a nod to experience.
Yeah.
Like when you're young and naive, It's
Oh yeah, I bought
And
plenty
have-
of basket cases and hemorrhaged money and lost my ass plenty of times.
John was hoping that this was going to go down the path of that Fleetwood Mac viral video where you're going to offer him up a Bronco because you feel badly for him.
It's
No, I'm not ready.
When
I'm not ready.
When John's talking about it, I'm like, here we go. And all of a sudden, there's just going to be a free Bronco at the end.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
Playing
accept it.
Dream by Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah.
You just created like the perfect opportunity that I'm going to have to seize to do yet another unpaid plug. So I have a children's charity called Go Campaign, and it's gocampaign.org, and we're all about like identifying local heroes and communities in the U.S. and abroad who are like already deeply engaged in a community, see a problem or a solution to create opportunities for children in their community. They're already doing something, but they can't scale it. So we come in and provide the grant money, and we connect them to other local heroes, 70, 80 of them now globally, as well as our leadership team to help them run the most sustainable, smartest program they can do to widen their impact, to change our world for the better through kids. So we just did a Icon, not a Bronco yet. We did an Icon FJ44, the big 6-passenger, and to raise money for Go, because like most charities, it's been a super harsh year. We couldn't do our big party that I throw every year that's responsible for a lot of the money we raise to support these programs. We built this truck, and it's like a sweepstakesy giveaway through Omaze, where we've already raised over $100,000 net for the charity, and it's still live. It closes in mid-November, and it's super cool. So it's super built out FJ44 Icon, $20,000 cash tucked into the gun-rated locking stainless center console, plus shipping, taxes, and DMV all paid for. And you don't have to donate money to the charity because legally we have to allow that. But I'll think you kind of suck if you don't help the kids, even with $5, let me just say. And you can go to omaze.com/icon. I don't know if this is airing quick enough, but I think it ends on November 18th, and we intend to keep doing it.
Yeah, you're good.
It's already really working.
Yeah, and we can get the all the information to put on when we go to post the podcast as well.
Sweet.
We'll put it on the IG as well.
Cool.
We'll put it in Linktree.
So, John, that's as close as I can get to like building out that dream for you.
I mean, basically, it's the same thing, except it's
Tyler,
more charitable.
Tyler
I'll
and I
trade
will
you for a
both-
house.
Hey, I'd do
Hey,
that.
look,
There you
I
go.
can live. You can live in your Icon, but I won't be able to drive my house.
That's true.
So it's all relative.
Yeah,
It's funny. I just been diving into your guys' world a little bit in recent years. My neighbor's my house is from 47. My neighboring house is built in 52. One owner home. I knew her before she passed, fix her sprinklers, change her light bulbs, whatever, help her as she got up in the years. And then she did one of those reverse mortgages, and it was a disaster, a horrible train wreck. But anyway, turns out the house is pretty neglected. It's like an eyesore in the neighborhood. Everyone hates it. The bank owns it. They start going to sell it. So here come the parade of the developers. And I know what they're going to do because I see it happening everywhere in my neighborhood. They're going to build.
Pretty sure that your dog might be on the
dog is
speaker right
amazing.
now.
Huh?
I
All we
think
can
your
hear is
dog
the
might be on
dog.
your speaker right now.
Oh,
snoring.
yeah. My 3 Frenchies. That's not snoring. That's breathing. Sorry.
It's amazing.
I'm like,
It was real
whoa.
quiet, and I was like, "What is that?" And then all of a sudden, it was just full bore.
Well, I guess we know where the mic is on this cable now.
Yeah, I thought it was crotch rubbing for a second, but then I realized it wasn't. A crotch should not make that sound.
So they were going to build like a 3-story McMansion to an inch of the property line, which was going to be looking down into my backyard, which is what I cherish in my house. I've been saving up to buy a commercial property, but I realize I'm never going to be able to afford one the size. We're like 100,000 square, and it's crazy money here. So I bought that house. Then being the geek that I am, going into it, telling my wife, it'll be like a retirement investment, some moldings, some handles, paint job, roof, party on, we'll lease it. Yeah. 2 years later, my buddy who's a GC and an Icon client and a fellow goober, we gutted it. We left the exterior walls. I went to town and back on that house. I just went nuts. I even designed and made all the light fixtures with my CNC and my laser and all my shop tools. But it was super fun. And then now the latest project in your world has really been fun. A dear friend of mine who has a stupid, crazy good car collection. We're in a car club together. And we kept traveling all these different crazy collections and museums. And I'm always bitching. They're like these incredible collections. And they'd be in like some horrible fluorescent lit concrete floor tilt up plain Jane building, or it would look like a 50s diner barfed, and there's like neon and gas stations, like ephemera everywhere, and you can't even just clutter, right? So I kept saying, nah, man, people should do it like a museum and create immersive environments themed. So we were friends for like a year, and we'd be at shows, and I'd be waxing stupid info that my odd brain retained about one obscure car and then another, and invariably go, I never knew that. I have one of those. I never knew that. So I felt like a year into the relationship, like he's super under the radar guy, but I'm like, all right, cough it up. I need the list. Show me the list. What do you got? Because this Duesenberg, that Rolls, that Shelby, that Fossil Vega, like all these crazy cars that bring us like, got it, but like very subtly almost doesn't want to say he has it. And then once he shows me the list, we fly up to his collection and he lays down the gauntlet. He's like, all right, Mr. Mouth, you got all these ideas of how a car collection building should be. Here's my warehouse, size of a football field, 80s boring stucco, flesh-colored, old heat vent AC duct factory. Design it. You want the job? And I'm like, well, let's back up here. Like, I have no training. I know nothing about architecture. I'm full of opinions. But hell yeah, I'll take the job on 2 conditions. I can hire a team, a project manager. We need an architect on record. We need a zoning and permit, local politics dude. We need our SketchUp render surfacing people. We need the engineering consults. I won't charge $1 for it, but I need a team and a manager to keep us on track. And it has been so much fun. But we were the idiots who geeked out for a year in CAD and in rendering to then start getting quotes from vendors to see the cost to execute my stupid ideas. Yeah, now we're having to cancel a few and rein back because we were at like 20 million build out.
Well, I saw the renderings. I think you did a live on IG once, and you were going crazy.
Oh,
you walked around the shop, and then you went to your office, and then you pulled it up.
Yeah,
and it was
quick screenshot.
It was unbelievable.
That shit. Yeah, it's going to be nuts. So we're just going to have to do. I'm not pulling back on the quality of anything we're going to execute, but we're not going to execute as many environments for now.
See, you're somebody who does this, so you know that it's not a matter of diluting the big picture as much as like scaling the size of it so you can still execute at the same level.
Yeah, but to keep your heart in it, to keep your pride involved and keep the whole team inspired.
But you always have to discuss that budget up front. That's where you went wrong.
Yeah, I kept asking him.
That's like a rookie mistake. Oh, you got to get it out of him.
He wouldn't give me a number.
She starts throwing numbers at him. Be like, are you at the 20 million? Are you thinking 20 million?
You're right. That's the last step I didn't have the wisdom for. But like his attitude going in was, I want it done at another level. It's not about the money. It's about your vision and the team, and let's make it happen. And I kept warning him, and he kept, don't worry about it. Then we got to this point. Then he's like, ooh, well, So then it was like pulling teeth to get that out of him to understand the comfort level, to then go, okay, I hear you. But you're totally right. I should have just like thrown the 20 mil dart at the wall and see if he winced or grimaced or are we good with that. But I mean, we just went into it with he was cool and he's been patient because it's been over a year. Now he wants to get started. And now I'm like, well, okay, reality check, buddy. Now we had the financial reality check. So we have to stop everything.
Yeah.
We have to trend back. We have to redesign, value engineer before we can move forward. But it's been a really cool. I've learned a lot of things, including what you just taught me, throughout the process. And I'd like nothing more than to keep my team together and do this, like, just maybe as a side hustle, like one client at a time every couple of years. Be really, really rewarding.
So I'll be interested to find out how you found that team. Like, what did you value in those people? Was it like what I'm having an issue with is the client I have is that they wanted to do the 1, 2, 3 sub quote and price against each other, and not the personality and relationship I've had with people before. That was my flag. Like, so how did you find?
So right back at y'all. That's your mistake.
Yeah.
To have communicated, a big part of me and what I create. It's like a lot of times I think people think Icon is just me designing, selling, crafting, tigging, hammering, wrenching, building everything. Well, duh, it's not. It takes a village. So it requires both my internal team and my sublet network. So like if a client said, oh, but this body shop that repaired my Tesla when I wrecked it when it rained last year, they were great. I want to use them. No. Like, it's about an entire world, a culture, a microclimate of creators and craftsmen, and you're buying that whole team. You're buying into my vision, my experience, but the network of like-minded souls that it takes to create something like this. So in that case, again, as usual, from lack of proper training, I did it from a soulful sense. I brought in a friend who was a design lead at Jeep for many years, who's a dear, dear friend, who had recently quit the automotive space to start his own independent design team to get into doing, like, he did the Shinola Hotel, he either do architectural projects, restaurants, boats, like all sorts of stuff. And he's my kind of goober. And the second I called and just waxed poetic about the vision for 10 minutes, he's like, where do we start? Like, I'm in. Then he knew a project manager in his world that he had a long history with. And then later in the game, I brought in Pink Floyd's sound and light engineer because I'm just a geek for this guy. He's a genius. And I'm like, all right, you want the best. How about the dude that was responsible for all the lights and the lasers and the sound engineering for Pink Floyd ever since The Wall? I think he'll come up with some fresh perspectives. And then I fell in love for obvious reasons, but also from like a Stanley Kubrick world perspective with the art direction and set design and production design from Ford versus Ferrari. So I reached out to the genius responsible for that, Francois Audouy, and turns out he lives like one canyon away from me. We go to the same Starbucks in the morning and said hi to each other, never knew who each other were. I cold called him on Instagram, got him on the phone, gave him that same 10 minutes of vision, and he's like, oh, this is so up my alley. He's like, not what I do, but it involves layers of authenticity that I get away without in film that I yearn to explore. So we just ended up with this incredible team of people with incredible skills and different perspectives and specialties that dovetail to really create a killer master alliance of sorts.
It's funny because you bring in subs on my job and it's like, well, let's use this electrician because I saw him in the Billows supply parking lot, not Home Depot. And you're calling up people from Pink Floyd.
But you know what? It's just the audacity to do so. It's not that like Nick's a friend. Yeah. It's not like I had the dude's number. Ever since I was a teenager dating out of my league, it never hurts to ask. If you don't ask, you're going to get what volunteers itself.
I think if any, like, I think the one nugget is like having the audacity to ask. And I think
Never
a lot,
hurts to ask.
yeah, and
Never
I
hurts
think,
to
and
ask.
in myself included, I think oftentimes you get caught up in well, I don't belong here. This is out of my league, or I can't build that yet, or that's this is too big of a project for it. And it I think we asked about it earlier, and you started touching on it, but it's like when you go back to that first project where it was going to be your master, like you were going to go all in on it. Because I'm relating a lot of this to my career, my business, and it's like how we want to hyper focus and we want to do really high quality work and be paid for it and given the time to do it. And it's like, and I feel as though there's these bob and weaves where it's like, all right, well, every once in a while we take on a project, John, like you were saying, like we take on this project that, all right, it's like we'll do it, we'll get it done, but then it's like at the end of the day, it might be a good project or it might not be, but it wasn't what we were set out to do. And it's like, I think, in large part, it's the part, like when you're growing a company or scaling or hiring more people, that the saying of like feeding a machine, right? But the other side of it is like, I guess my question is, looking back at that first project, was it from that first project that you never strayed? It was always 100% effort every single project, and you weren't taking on a break job to keep the bills paid, like you said.
Yeah, I think and I did this for 20 years in business, but I can't remember what business book I was reading, and it seemed like a good idea, so I did it. I sat down and put pencil to paper to define what are my core tenements, right? And that could be one thing, it could be 20, and then when you look at the 20, you're probably going to realize there's some redundancy, and you find the core of it, right? You chew on it for a while, bring it back. And this is a private, I think, exercise.
Yeah.
With you in your own head, out of your head onto paper, put it away, come back, look at it again, and drill down. So define the hell yeah and the F no's. Then make sure that whatever it is you go out to create or build or do must answer to that core, that base ethic, right? So it's like, define your perspective, respect your perspective, preach your perspective, and then if you're lucky and still in business, protect that perspective at all costs. That's like where I am. Whilst, as I said earlier, still at the point of, okay, how do I do all that, but now look at it from a more P&L business sense as well. Like, don't stop doing the things that aren't the big money makers, but are absolutely crucial to our culture and my singular commitment and passion, and therefore to clients that you want to get it, really getting it. Whilst at the same time, like, could it be done in poplar wood because it'll hit a price point? Probably could, right? Like, or is there a trick that you do in GC work or a joinery technique or something for which you've come up with a jig or a fixture or a technique that you could turn into intellectual property that could grow and go and really, in many cases, right, end up being more valuable on a spreadsheet than your core company, but still allow you to protect your core company? I think those are the things that are ongoing, never-ending struggles or balances, but the things that I feel at this point in my career that I'm excited to have gained relative ability to focus and acknowledge those things.
I think that's why I asked you earlier if these separate ventures or ideas would be independent of Icon, because I feel like it is so difficult to make a considerable amount of money when you have that much passion doing what you do or having that artistic sense, because at the end of the day, you're going to put the necessary hours in, whether you're getting paid for it or not. And what on paper may look like a huge moneymaker on $1 million build for a car is probably one of your least profitable projects because you're
Always
just
will
putting
be.
so much R&D into it.
Yeah. Even though the client's paying for that R&D, you're not getting any repeatability or scale out of it.
Sure.
And it's sucked your brain trust. So, I mean, I think I've got a pile of ideas that I want to explore. Hopefully we'll have the opportunity to explore some of them. Now, some of them I'd like to explore with other people's money. And I'd like to build a master alliance, again, that build a team that allows you to elevate your potentials beyond your core capabilities, and just take a tiny sliver of what could become a huge commercial pie. Then there's other things that I see similar to Icon, but don't fit within sort of the defined aesthetic of Icon that I want to do as a creative, but I have to be careful to explore how do I execute those without taking my eye off the ball at Icon or not minding my responsibilities to my current brand.
Yeah.
And deciding, do I do that one versus the venture capital one where I just sit on the board and hope for a small piece and hope to see my concept brought to market? And honestly, I think that's a matter of what opportunities show up. One thing that I've seen in my life I was professionally full-time working since I was 7. Like lily pads, every handshake, every introduction, every email, every phone call, every trip, every chance encounter, every design I see and engage with and am drawn to, you never know where anything's going to lead. And it's been such an incredible journey that I would have never anticipated. Being just open and aware and not having blinders on, all the relationships, friendships, business opportunities in general that have come, and just everything comes together. And like, you can call it chance, you can call it karma, you can call it serendipity. I just think it's a matter of being open and present, because you never know where one project's going to lead, right? So I think it's just a matter of trying to make sure you engage in things that are healthy and feel right in the beginning, and hopefully they don't go sideways and they grow into other opportunities and friendships.
I think that's where I relate a lot is like, I think about what I want out of my business and, the particular product that I want to build and all of the, everything that is against me, what the market says, what, the neighborhood say, what other people tell me that like, you can't build that here. And I refuse to believe that. And I know, and a good portion of my brain power is put into what are the steps necessary for me to get there and get my team there. But then on the flip side, I think about the other side, and I think it's what you kind of touched on earlier is like, well, what about everyone else? How can I also build a product that, maybe it's more of a commodity, but it's still done in a way that is, more refined than the rest of the shit on the market. And I play this back and forth where it's like, where does my energy, focus in like you just said, it's like, how do you focus on something that like the commodity side of it, where that's not your ultimate, that's not the artist in you. That's like, how do I build a product that, allows my business to scale,
right,
supports
but senior
me.
care is expensive.
Yeah.
So you got to think about that too, right?
not getting
As you get
cheaper
older,
either.
like, yeah.
You should have had more kids. But the artist in you is like, no, I want to focus on like you build high-end vehicles. I want to build high-end contemporary homes. And it's like, I just want to focus on that, just that. And it's every time I feel like we take steps towards it, and then it's like, all right, we gotta peel back a little bit and do a couple projects that don't fit that mold. And, and then we'll go back to focusing on getting there. And, you said something earlier in the podcast. It's like, I realized that it wasn't going to be a rendering. It wasn't going to be me talking about it. It wasn't going to be anything until I built it and proved to people that it could be built, and the price was the price and the time was the time. And this is the product that I can make available. Who's interested? And that's exactly where I am in this process. Is like, I sat down with a couple of people on my team and we were talking the other day, and it's like, this is what we need to do. We just need to build this thing.
I feel like
So
this is
can you float that boat?
I feel like it's a really dangerous podcast for Nick right now because
so
like your
that's why I've
thought
been so
process
quiet.
and Nick's thought process are scarily similar.
So
And
hold
I feel
on.
like he's just listening to everything that you're saying, and he's like already wheels
John,
are already rolling.
I'm never this quiet on a podcast, but I'm literally I'm writing
Yeah, like this
I
is
never
not-
I never take notes. I'm taking notes. Like yeah.
So is that what keeps you up at night right now? Like, is that are you envisioning the land and the
100%.
property and every little geek out detail? Like you can, it's
100%.
literally a brain CAD model.
Yeah, and you said earlier it's like you're a craftsman if your hobby is also a craft, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, yep, check, like check mark, like I'm like this is all I do. It's like I go home, I watch, I dig into architecture. I build I built cars growing up. Like I'm building two vehicles. Well, building one and kind of restoring another.
Is a strong word.
Well, I built it up until recently. I spent 12 years building it. Now I have someone helping me finish it because I don't.
So
have
wait,
time.
so riddle
It's
me
like
this:
someone else's shop.
could you swing it?
Could I financially?
Yeah.
Not myself, no.
Do you have a network? Do you have people that believe in you enough that even if
Yes.
margin wise it'll suck for you, but you float it and you can feed your kids and float your boat and keep other things active? Could you do it?
Yes,
Then it's time.
I know.
Oh God, John!
I
See,
agree.
like,
You gotta get out of
John
your
and
head
I
or-
this whole time are the ones on all these podcasts. We're like, yeah, Nick, give it time. You know, it's early. It's gonna happen. It's gonna be organic. And then you're on here, and Nick's
No,
like,
it's eating him inside.
Yeah,
That's when it's time.
But Nick he's on a rocket ship, and I feel like this whole time this whole conversation's happening, Nick, as you've dialed in a little bit deeper, I think of the Elon Musk podcast with Joe Rogan, and he's like, well, I bought a bunch of properties to build myself a house. And then Elon Musk was like, then I said, should I build myself a house or should we go to the moon? Like, and he was like,
it's a natural progression.
we should go to the moon. So he goes, I sold the other properties and we went to the moon. So it's like, Nick, I mean, John, you 35 years in.
But that's what was eating him alive. That's what was keeping him up at night is going
He's
to the
already
moon.
convinced himself, John. There's no sense.
I know, but my point is like, I just think.
Nick, your retort was exactly going to be mine. So I'm still with Nick.
So John, okay, 5 years in at TLC or Icon, like with the risk, I mean, we're talking big numbers. What Nick wants to build, like I dabble in specs because I love that. Like, hey, how do I give an entry level product that people can walk through at an open house and go, oh shit, this is what it's supposed to look like. I love that, but like I don't do that with my own money. And what Nick wants to do is take the fraction of what I'm doing is taking like $1.2 million in a spec that's not my money, design it, build it, and then it sells, usually pre-sells. Nick wants to go, I love it. I absolutely love it. I just feel like John, you said you have a team. You have a not a machine, but it's a well-oiled machine that can run while you can then dabble in the leather and do all these other things that are giving you time to kind of break away. But that wasn't year 5. Maybe it was. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's like.
But hold on. Again, in Nick's defense, my dabbling and thinking about other brands and extensions of this brand and other segments of industrial design that I want to explore, that's the luxury I have now, many years in.
Yes.
You must get it out of your head to maintain your remaining sanity transition moment is when I was still pretty much hand to mouth chasing payroll cycles, right? But I could barely viably build that first icon to get it out of my head and into reality. So those are different transitions. So it was, I don't know, 100 and probably sunk all my time, probably spent 200 grand building that first prototype in about a year of my time.
Nick,
It was stressful, but I got through it. But on his scale and, spec home, batshit cool, better than everyone, kind of what you're envisioning, which I'd love to see. If you have people that trust you, that you trust, who'll help you spec it, who'll float it. And if you can meet your nut with your other projects that are doing well and you can manage it, now's the time, right? Like, again, even if you only make even if what you make on that 2-year, 3-year project, you could have made in 10 months with a run-of-the-mill client job, you will have defined your perspective and your style, and it'll open up a whole new world of clients and opportunities and potentials. As simple as the first person who invested, and it's so stoked on the return and the quality of your team and your work that they're like, hell yeah, let's do 3 more, and you go in a different direction. Or it's clients, or it's visibility, or dwell, or whatever, exposure. But I would say go for it.
Yeah. Nick, let us know what you need help with, because at this point, there's no turning back.
There's no turning back.
This is like Nick sitting here. Everything's just
he finally got an enabler
right now.
This
he
is
finally has somebody who's just like, no, man, you're good.
We all need enablers.
No, but it's what you just said. It's like you made the reference, like you could make what you made in 3 years in 10 months if you did a client. Like, that's never been why I want to do it. Ultimately, like, my long term, yes, the goal is to become, have financial freedom or become wealthy based on what I want to build, right? But I don't want to. Yeah, but I don't want to build that going in saying I need to make X amount of money. I want to build that product to prove a point.
Right.
Just
and how
like
old
you built that.
What are you, 37?
32.
32. All right. So you have kids, right?
2, yeah.
All right. So they're only going to get more expensive.
Right.
The world's only going to get more expensive. You're only going to have more overhead, more burden, more liability, more HR, more
Agreed,
insurance
and
costs,
it's like,
and all of that.
And that's where I'm at. Yeah, it's like, why do I keep? And that, I agree.
What are you waiting for?
John and Tyler literally.
Why are you even still on this podcast?
Get off the podcast.
Hang up.
Some of you guys mandate my mute.
Nick's gonna have this podcast on repeat, just looped.
Guys, listen to
Over
2
and
hours
over.
and 2 hours and 4 minutes over and over and over.
Well, I think the hardest part, Nick, is the mafia. Is going to be the realtors that want you to comply to the formula that is out there.
I know
they're going to be the ones that comp this thing, and the investors will then have to
But I can't imagine John didn't have that same thing where it's like you can't build a restored vehicle. You can't build a vehicle and sell it for $200,000. Like, no one's going to buy that. Where it's like now you're selling vehicles with an entry price of a $250,000 and well over to $1 million. And it's like you talk about $1 million. It's like you talk to an average person, they're thinking a Bugatti.
Look, people still be looking for a constipated horse if Henry Ford had listened to them. So
I'm on your page, man.
Yeah. So it's just an extension of the same old thing.
So the realtor's got to get rid of the constipated horse and deal with the Bugatti.
There you go.
Well, I think that goes back to some of I have like a whole list of things here. Is that it's like shareholders. Like John, you were able to pay for that first icon on your own. There was no one really to answer to except for the missus and the bank account at the end of the month. But it's like when you have to grab someone else's money. Nick, I've been doing this in Wellesley, and I trust me, I'm 100%. I have your back. Do this. The design you have, John, if you saw it, and the things that he has for inspiration that aren't done in our area, and at the level he can execute at, it's a slam dunk. It absolutely is. The problem is we have a spec that we have coming up that pre-sold, and the realtors are dealing with the architect, my architect, and is like, hey, we should do this. And I'm like, you don't do the staircase like this. And they're like, no, we want to put a hallway in. And my architect calls me and goes, in 25 years, not one client's ever called me and said we need to put a hallway in the house. But this is what the realtors are pitching, and they get a hold of the investor. I'm just a guy building it. And I'm like, I don't want this. So I'm sitting back going, can we please have someone pre-buy this so I can build what we're supposed to build? And sure enough, someone came on, was like, hey, love what you guys do. Love the lot. Can we change the design? But what I'm worried is that, if I can be completely honest here, is that you're going to get into this, and with having investor money, there's going to be that whole shareholders thing where people are going to start poking at you, like your first endeavor at trying to do this automobile for a manufacturer, that it's so diluted that it isn't what you wanted, and you spend 2 years trying to create it, and then you're really let down at the results.
Am I naive to think that it would be just like vetting a client, where it's like, I need to vet the right investor. I need to vet the investor that believes in the vision, not the investor that is solely doing it for the 15% return and wants to control it.
You probably don't
definitely
need a typical investor.
You gotta vet the investor, and hopefully already have a relationship, ideally, with that investor, so you're into their heart and mind more than them just being like sort of VC minded on the return.
Are you interested?
I don't have any money. I've been bitching about that for the last 2 hours.
If you don't ask, it can't hurt to ask, right?
No, but I think
Tyler,
Nick, I think you're
Tyler
right.
is my chief of investor relations over here.
I got a long list, man. I'd love to get into home design and architecture.
We got to sell that place next door to you.
I want to do more watches. Like, there's so many designs on languages and segments that I just aching to explore.
So John, I actually knew that you were into watches, and I believe you know Rich Costa. He's a metal fabricator.
Yes.
He used the best bumper on, I think, the FJs he built.
Yeah, it's been years, but yeah, I came across him. Is he a watch geek too?
No, I was chatting with him, and he said you guys knew each other through the Toyotas, but he left the bump, like he was building. He's like, I'm not tooting my own horn. I built the best bumper for these trucks. Like, I shipped them to every single country in the world, but there was no money in it, so he left it. And a couple of years ago, I had met him because his metal work is just insanely meticulous, and he said, I want to get into architectural metal, like doing handrails and things like that. And we had done a handrail together, and it was that project that he stopped the bumpers on, and he's been doing all our metal work ever since.
Oh, great.
And I had mentioned your name, and he goes, yeah, dude, I know him. And he just like went off. He's like, he loves watches. He's crazy. Like he goes, all these crazy hobbies. And he's literally like texting me nonstop tonight while I'm on here. But
say hi. It's been a long time.
Yeah. But so do you refurbish or build, like, you're building watches as well?
So no, another Nick understands.
Yeah, you guys are on the same page 100%.
It was just another one of those keeping me up at night things where I had an idea for years, and I'm a big watch collector geek. And I mean, since I was a kid, like Swatches and Casios, through to I've gone a little bit into the deeper end of the pond as I've gotten older. But I'm going to my safe to see. Hopefully the Wi-Fi is good here. I basically went.
This is awesome.
So I was training in a new CAD platform called Fusion 360 from Autodesk, and they're super cool. Great company, great culture. They sent up a like rock star engineer to be my private tutor once a month for a year. And when the guy first showed up, he's like, all right, what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I've been thinking about that. We could do, there's a bumper, and, we got a long list of product development stuff that we need to get into and like get done and get to market. I'm like, but I already kind of got engineers, and they're really talented, and they're already knocking that out. I've had this idea for a watch in my head for a couple of years now. That's what I want to learn this CAD platform in. I want to design a watch. And so based on the old Duesenberg SJ gauges, specifically the speedometer and the tachometer back in the day, it was actually like a drum gauge where you've got your round gauge, and then perpendicular to the round gauge, you have a spherical, basically tape reel that rotates to indicate the speed on a flat plane window. So in a watch, it's called a jump hour watch. So I took the aesthetic of the SJ through to like the radiator cap, the attaching hardware for the fenders, the wire wheels, that gauge, like tons of elements that I just goobered out on. So the light's not good enough in here. So
our listeners couldn't hear it, but John picked up his computer and walked into his safe and started digging around and pulled out a watch.
I thought he was getting money for my investment, but
no.
Well, there's no money in the safe because it's got watches in it. So it's
that's sweet.
all T2 and T5 titanium, double AR, alternating convex crystal, and then organic EDM cut and polished onyx. And then it's a jumping hour movement. So the top window has the hours and the bottom is the minutes. And they just kind of, the bottom one wanders through the cycle and the top one clicks in a nanosecond. But then it was just as a design exercise, like design the case and the crown and the strap and the buckle, like nothing's off the shelf, down to the typeface that's on the main body of the movement on through to the made in Switzerland, design in California, the number and all that. And it was just like this, again, it was one of those projects that was keeping me awake at night. And to learn the CAD platform, I chose that. And then I was really in trouble because then I was like, okay, now I really, 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 really got to make this happen. And I did it, and I released it, and it went well. I had it made in Switzerland, learned a lot about the smoke and mirrors that is the luxury watch world. And I want to do another one. But I still have, I think, 4 left in stock, and my wife is fiscally more responsible than I, even though the project's well into the black. She's like, until those are all out of there, you're not doing another one.
NS Builder's watch.
Yeah.
I remember I looked up that watch right when it came out, and I was like, "Oh, this could be. I could get. And I can't afford a truck. I'll get a watch." And I remember I looked it up like eagerly, and I was like, I remember looking at the whole thing, and then I got to like the price tag, and I was like, "Oh yeah, we'll have to hold off on that too."
But you know what? In its defense, even before you get into limited edition, but like the same movement, same partners for the crystal and the band, like all the people that made all the components on my team are the same exact companies and movement makers and complication providers. Like they're that same movement. They're the lowest price point comparable watch on the market using the same caliber, I think is 33 grand.
Yeah.
I believe it. No, it's
so if
definitely...
someone wanted to buy this watch, where would they go to buy it?
It's on the main Icon site. It's got its own little section. It's
Let's
called
get
the
this
Doozy.
watch sold.
Right?
You know?
Well, I think we got I think 4 to sell before I get greenlit.
Oh,
But we're close.
we better
We
get
got-
going.
I did
How many
a-
were
I did
there
a
total?
run.
5?
50.
John, you,
Total.
you mentioned the typeface, which is interesting. I don't know if you've seen the show Abstract on Netflix.
Oh, loved it.
So
yeah.
there was a whole
Although the
typeface.
second season wasn't nearly as good as the first season. But
I'm not
brilliant
sure which
show.
one it was on, but they talk about typeface, but they talk about typeface on watches specifically, and how oftentimes on a watch the typeface changes dramatically, where it's like it's almost not even the same letter or number.
Oh, wait a minute. I haven't seen that episode. Now I have to chase that down. Because that's
it's
what
interesting.
started pissing me off as a OCD designer, right? Like crazy high-end watches that are global brands that are like heirloom cherished stuff. And their brand name is one font. The date window is another font. The made in Switzerland is the third font. The markings on the back,
But
and none of them have any design continuity or relevance to the shape and form.
But it was something I want to say it was the number 4, and I could be wrong on that. But there's the number. One of the numbers is always written in a funny way, where it's like it's not the way you would ever write it on a piece of paper or the way your computer types it. It's just always different. And they talk about it and they get into the watch. I think it's the typeface Abstract show. Episode.
I'll hunt that
but
down.
It's just
See,
when you
I
mention
designed all my own typeface. I don't know, can you see my 4?
Yeah. Yep. It's
got
open
a
on the
good
back,
4.
like the top back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted that Deco Nouveau
Yeah.
kind of early language and stuff, but such geeks. Listen, for example, though, I already know when it comes time to put the address markers up for the final permit sign-off on Nick's dream architectural exploration, he's not going to Home Depot and buying letter.
I've already designed it.
See,
Like I swear, the number plate is something that drives me crazy. I haven't had numbers on my house since I renovated it, and we just put it on the other day because we've had a sticker there because I'm like I have this drawing.
Yeah,
I want it to have a light above it.
Right.
Yeah, it's gonna be it's gonna like it. Yeah.
Same here. Like for the house next door, I let the local veterans, whatever, they come by for like $40. They'll just spray paint on the curb and party on, so you're compliant. I'm like, that's fine. Give me time. And then I ended up seeing and developing the typeface for it because, like, 1952 deep dive, come up with the right font. It's so much fun.
But it is like to take something down to that level, and it's like to see it done in vehicles, and to see, what I would define as success, right, for you, and like what you've built as far as a brand and the vehicles, but like you can see that it doesn't stray. And like right in the beginning of the podcast, you talk about the guy that dropped his pen and pulled the seat out, and it's like all of that stuff, all of the wire loom or the heat shrink and the escutcheons or whatever you were talking about. And I
love that word. No one uses that word. I love escutcheon. Yeah, it's a brilliant word.
But then you reference to when someone cuts open a hole in the drywall and then they see the wiring, and it's like that's what we talk about. And it's like we just had this conversation with one of our electricians. It's like there's something about, we know it gets covered up. We all do. We all know it's going to get covered up. You don't have to
know it's there.
But it's like it looks good. And I think, John, you've made the reference, and I think it was your AC guy. It's like, would you be proud of that if I took a picture of it? Mm-hmm. And it's like, it makes them check themselves. And it's like, I know you don't need to do that, but it's like, this is how I want it to operate. I want us to be proud of everything we do. The staples, I want them to line up because it just shows that you give a shit. And it's like,
that's what divides a tradesman from a craftsman, or a laborer from an artist.
Right.
But that everyone has to be on that same page, like John said earlier. It's
Tell me about it. I don't know how big your crews are. We've got, I think, 52 people, and I need more, and I can't find them. It's so hard when mass culture is going in a completely different direction.
Right.
To not only establish, but to maintain and grow that culture and workforce is a huge challenge. But again, now's the time, right? Now more than ever, I would argue, do you have consumers that are open and ready to hear a story and embrace deeper consideration, and in many cases are willing to put their money where their heart is?
Right.
I'm looking right now. So wait, I was listening to another podcast with you, and I guess along the same lines, where you're having trouble finding people to come to work for your people in the trades. That there's a lot of people right now who are capitalizing off of things that you've done or the industry that's hot right now, and I think that we're kind of running into that on our end where the real estate market is booming. People are moving. People are buying new houses, renovating them. And we're finding that there's people who don't have the experience, don't have the expertise, who are jumping into this and capitalizing.
Because you proved it, and they see a capitalistic opportunity solely.
Sure. And it's
so frustrating, isn't it?
It is. And I think that a lot of people don't understand why that's so frustrating. And it's not necessarily that those people are taking work from you or that they're a threat to you from a competition standpoint. You have as much work as you need on your plate. It's
dilution though, right? So at some point it is a problem. But the problem is you can't act all butthurt about it, because then you're the ass. So it's like a fine line. But I don't know. I think anyone whose heart and soul goes into what they're doing, when they see somebody else coming at it from other perspectives or trajectories, there is a distaste. It's going to be there. It's fundamental. And the probably most frustrating aspect that I see of that is the U.S. legal system right now for intellectual property is designed by and for lawyers to make sure they are constantly making money. It's not about protecting your intellectual property, your process, your design. It's almost impossible and constantly hemorrhaging money to defend your intellectual property just so you can keep your name and not lose it. Because if the way the laws are structured, if you don't chase every single infringer, Then when the big boy wants to steal it, they can just take it.
Sure.
And they can say, oh, it's a generic term. You didn't defend it against Joe Blow and Joe Schmo. And I that's that kind of stuff I find is the more bitter side of me over time. I mean, I've seen plenty of companies come into this space and leave this space because they weren't passionate and there was no honesty in the product. And eventually consumers feel that and they smell it and word gets out. But at the same time, I've seen others really prosper, really strong. I mean, there's aftermarket automotive companies that have stolen my design, lock, stock, and barrel, my exact widget. I knew the owner of a company, not well, but like, hi, Scott. Hi, Jonathan. See him at a trade show, standing at his booth. He's got an array of products. They're all my designs. Scott, what are you doing? He goes, yeah, it's business, man. Sorry. I'm like, is that where we are culturally? That like, you can just shrug your shoulders and say, that's business? He's like, well, yeah, I mean, we kind of, that's the world, man. Wow.
I think that is a lot of the world, but that's not our world. You know, we didn't get into this for that. We got into this again for that artistic side or for self-expression or to just do the absolute best that we can. And what's frustrating to me is that it's not just about the money, it's not just about the politics, it's not just about the legality, it's the fact that you put those thoughts that woke you up at night and that
the
blood,
honor
the sweat,
of it,
the
tears.
vision,
totally.
Yeah, like
you know
that's more than the money, than the legal, that like there's just more to it than that. But that's not everyone's world.
But we've already solved that problem, I think, if you put it in perspective, because you touched on it ever so briefly. You guys can only build so many houses true to your vision. I can only take on so many commissions. We have a 1 to 4 year back order company-wide, depending on which car series or whatever. And sure, would I like that longer? Would I like to triple my output? Sure. Can I? Probably not, right? There's so many constrictions. So at the end of the day, if you tell your story and you keep your honesty, I would like to hope there's enough consumers for people like us that our order books are full. And even though that guy sleeps perfectly well at night, probably stealing my designs, and Lord knows he sells multiples, double or triple digit multiples more of that widget than I do. And he probably retails them for less than it costs me to domestically make it when he's making it offshore. At the end of the day, there's an ass for every seat. And as long as you got enough of a market and you've managed to keep your pride and your passion intact and enjoy a good life, party on.
That was perfectly timed.
I didn't plan that. My friend started this mezcal brand. I'm generally a Scotch guy, but this stuff is so yummy.
This could be the most sponsored podcast we've ever had.
Right, but we're talking about shit we dig and people we love, so it's
exactly
different, right?
Good tequila. That's my jam.
Is it?
Really?
You like tequila?
What? I love tequila.
How am I supposed to know if you
I
love
don't know.
tequila or not?
I had one really bad night with tequila when I was 17, and I didn't touch the stuff for like ever, like decades.
No, it's literally the only thing I can drink straight.
I think COVID's made me a bit of a drunk, I must admit.
That's all right.
Have you been impacted by COVID?
Personally or business?
Business.
So business, oddly enough, considering I sell ice to Eskimos, we are considered an essential business.
Yeah.
So we were never mandated to close. So I never had that frightening situation where employees were happy to stay home and play Xbox and collect enhanced unemployment. We've had some hiccups. We had about 4 weeks of virtual shutdown with schools closed, employees needing to take care of their kids and stuff. We kept everyone on payroll. We furloughed nobody. I tightened my belt. I lost a fair amount of money. We stayed strong. Our tribe got stronger because of our expressed faith in them. Customers, I had 2 customers go away that were unable to finance their bills. One came back already, in fact, yesterday. The other one I don't anticipate coming back. Other than that, it has been ridiculously good.
Yeah.
Like the amount of requests and demands and sales is unparalleled. I think, frankly, because a lot of people of our demographic that live very busy, multitasking lives, right, now are like at home staring at their phone and geeking out and consuming and getting that dream car and finally placing that order and really have the time. So I think as long as culturally we don't go off of a larger collective cliff, COVID actually was a positive thing for our business.
Yeah.
So
Personally, culturally, it's been, a relative disaster. I've had family, my father got it, survived it. Multiple employees, family members got it. One employee got it. That was fun. We had to, 100,000 square foot shop. He works very closely with other individuals on his team. We had to shut the shop down and hire ServPro to come in and do a deep forensic clean. Like my toolboxes have never been that clean. And that was iffy. But, I think all of us business owners, small business owners, I think the biggest lingering concern is the liability isn't defined, right? Mm-hmm. So we're very concerned constantly about what is our shop policy for drop-offs, pickups, deliveries, visitors. We used to do shop tours to anyone who was interested. We had to stop that entirely. And then personal life and family, we had to be extra shut down. So on the creative front, I repurposed our guest room and turned it into my balls out leather studio. I bought tons of all the tools and machinery, and I'm nights and weekends hardcore doing that, and that's been wonderful. But on the flip side, we haven't engaged with a lot of friends. My wife's immune system's been compromised, so we've had to be very, very cautious and very stand back. And I hope to return to a new normal. And then personal, spiritually, major traveler, and I'm landlocked, and that sucks. I usually am, in a perfect world, 2 to 3 months a year. I'm out of here. I mean, I'm working. I may be up at wee hours of the morning to get to the right time zone on a laptop on my phone doing designs with a client or doing renders to get to my engineers to execute or whatever I need to do. But again, I'm finally at the point where we have enough structure and the right team that I can quasi-remote manage the company for fairly extended periods of time. So I'm yearning to get back out on the road for sure.
How do you, but you said that you have a 1 to 4 year wait list depending on the project, and then you had also briefly spoke about the one project going overseas and coming back a year and a half later, and that customer kind of losing interest and looking to value engineer that build. How do you keep your customers intrigued throughout that process? Are there things that are happening, or is it hey, we're not going to start for 3 years from now?
So that's tough for me and my clients, especially in the one-off, the derelicts and the reformers, because in the very beginning, they've got a vision or they buy into my vision. We go through an in-depth process of picking the exact era or design or body style. We find the car, we get the car, we bring it in, we scan it, we get it into CAD, we convert poly to true surface. So we have a digital model of the car. I start doing the design briefs with the client, picking textiles, leathers, tone of glass, paint, finishes, powertrain, get that lockdown signed off on, dead quiet. Because we have to wait until my sublets can pre-manufacture the critical components and until my labor force is ready to start on the project. So we are very upfront about that, number one, with the client of, okay, in the beginning, you and I deep dive, we're in. Then it's going to get to a point, then it's radio silence. Then about 6 months before we start the project, I'm going to circle back with you, make sure you're still in love, and we're still eye to eye on the design spec. for aesthetics and engineering. Then I'm going to ask for a chunk of money. Then we're going to get started, and then there forward it's in. What we've learned to do, though, is after the original build sheet and design phase, we do start engineering and design very early on, because labor is the most, like, once that ship's leaving the harbor, like, we got to be efficient. So there is opportunity to communicate with our clients as we're going through just renderings of designs and getting their input. Do you like number 1, number 2, number 3, or what have you, to help keep them engaged. And then once it starts, it's pretty easy because it's very visceral. And my project managers send them weekly updates with both labor entry as well as eye candy photos of processes and discoveries to keep them involved in the process throughout. And then mission critical, we've learned, not we, someone smarter than me on my team learned, we do 2 hard stops during any one-off project. We go back to that multi-layered spreadsheet the client likely never read, just went to the final estimate number. And we do a hard audit, and we compare true time spent, materials expended or applied, and sublets employed versus the estimate, to avoid that final shit show of expectations and overages, to make sure we're eye to eye with the client in the hopes of avoiding any drama. Because that's just, I hate that, as I mentioned. So that's pretty much how we manage it. I think the hardest thing is clients don't realize that even when the Instagram photo is sexy, or even the studio shoot's been done, or a magazine's already put on the cover, still ain't done. The last 5% is often 500 to 2,000 test miles done by various people on my team and myself to get every last little rattle and detail out of the way and handled and settled before we can sign it off. So I think probably the most common case of impatience that we experience with clients comes at that very end phase, when it looks like it's done and they're 99% paid up and it still ain't done. And, that's just part of the fun.
So like when do you give them a completion date?
We never give people hard numbers or hard completion dates.
That's where I went wrong. That's what it is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, on the one-offs, if it's something repeatable, done to a basic formula, plus or minus options, then yes, we give them a timeline. And again, other people with that skill set on my team have projections and maps and forecasts, and we're pretty good at that. We're pretty accurate. On the other hand, these one-off builds, hell, if we know, we've never done it before. We've done other nutty projects that involved similar tangents and variables. But sometimes, even at the point when a vehicle comes back from media blast and it's Swiss cheese and you thought it was a gorgeous body, well, that could add $100,000 in a year to a project. So that's part of that pre-screening, I think, of making sure clients understand the process. I hit people pretty hard in the very beginning with time and money factors, and then say, hey, that could be worst case. I could be wrong. We could discover another 800-hour problem. But this is a one-off dream. We'd love to build this for you as long as you understand the process.
It's amazing. I feel like that there's so many similarities to what we do. I mean, I feel like, and I know that we've said that this is very similar to Nick's business model, but Nick oftentimes he feels like his profit margins go down just because they're spending so much time and nothing is repeatable and there's no learned behavior. There's no like every system that you're creating for this job is only applicable to this job. So it's nothing you can take to the next one.
Yeah.
And like the experience, I think that having the confidence that you'll be able to get through this is one thing. But then not being able to use any of this to go to the next job, I think it's tough with anything that we do.
I do think it gets better though, meaning, here we are, whatever, 20 or so one-offs in. We're just getting to the point where we are seeing NRE opportunities. It just happened today. We were doing a 41 Cadillac. and we were trying to think of the lower outboard AC vents because the car never had AC. And we're like, well, we could do this, we could do that. We could buy this, but that sucks. So then we have to hide it. But what if we, and then we're like, wait a minute, what about the Hudson we did? We, spent irrational number of hours design developing, 3D printing and laser cutting and articulating dash fin, and it came out killer. Now we're starting to see, okay, we could change the sculpted profile and go from oval to rectangle and do minor CAD tweaks that are time efficient to do to individualize it and still keep it bespoke and one-off for that client. But avoid the brain drain of trial and error because we've done it, it worked, and we have faith in it, and we can repeat it, which makes that next job that much more efficient.
So there's hope yet, Nick.
Yeah.
Hang in there.
Oh, I feel like I'm filled with hope right now.
But there's also, I think, I went through an ego phase.
He's full.
Went through an ego-driven phase of doing, and I have at least 2 projects still in the shop that we're doing that are taking forever. And the reality is I wanted to do it to show I could do it, but at the end of the day, it's stupid. It's so much time and money involved, and even if the client's down with the money and kind of down with the time, at the end of the day, I'm now feeling like I don't need to do it to prove it to myself or others. So I start to look at projects with less of a, we're going to go crazy. Like, no, you don't really have to. You can make it elevated and special, but there's ways you can do that where you can focus those elements while still taking advantage of known engineering solutions and formulas.
Yeah.
So I think that's something I've been slow to learn, but embracing at least in like the last 2 years.
It's funny, Johnny. It's like the steel post with the column, right? And I know you commented on it.
I had your back on it.
I know and appreciate it, but it was like that was the notion from so many people that it was only done because you were trying to prove I was trying to prove a point and that I was wasting the client's money. And it's, in the end of the day, it was it a waste of money? Not in my opinion. The client also agreed, but it also wasn't this massive expense. It was like this complete misunderstanding by the general public of like
it's not for them. It's not for them. Who cares?
And what it
if your client, if you were transparent and honest with your client, and you said, "Hey, man," and I do this all the time, like, "Hey, we could just do this. That's what everyone does," or we can go down this ridiculous little cul-de-sac. But wouldn't it be cool? We could do it like this.
It's exactly it. It's like
I did that with this articulating fuel door for a Jeep Cherokee. It was totally unnecessary. It's probably 15 to 20 grand to engineer it and execute it to make it work properly. But I told the client going in, I'm like, look, it's got a gas cap. It's exposed. But look, there's that badge like 2 feet above it, and it ruins the symmetry of the side of the car. So if you're like me, and now that I pointed that out, you're never going to be able to unsee it. He's like, oh, yes. Oh, no, definitely. Now we got to do it. I'm like, okay, well, you say you got to do it. Now let's be clear. You understand what that could mean.
Right.
This could go smooth, and we could knock it out for 5 grand, or it could be 30 grand, and that's the unknown. That's the adventure, and either you're down with it and you trust that we're going to do it as efficiently as possible, or you're not. Yeah. He was, I am, we were. The car's not done, but the articulating taillight is, and it's pretty damn cool, if I may say so. And
I think I showed it to both you guys.
Yeah.
Oh, you saw it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally over the top. Yeah.
It's
so in
we fight that with suppliers too, like center console. We were buying a U.S. I really try and do domestic sourcing, so it was a U.S. made center console from a company in Colorado. They've been around forever. Unfortunately, they kind of seem like they stopped thinking in about '89 because they never like really evolved their tooling or their methodology or their construction. Friendly with them, I reached out. I went ahead and CAD modeled a evolved version because, hello guys, like in the last 20, 30 years, there's this new thing called a double-din stereo. It's not a rectangle, it's like taller. And like the piano hinge kind of sucks. You haven't sharpened your shear for 30 years. The edges will give you a razor cut. Your powder coat coverage is weak. Be cool if there was lighting, charge ports, everyone wants charge ports these days. And a gas shock for the lid would be a lot sexier. And a lock that's flush with the top deck would just ergonomically make more sense. Here's my CAD. Take it. Just make it. I'll buy it from you. I'll be happy. And they're like, no one else has complained. So now I'm a center console manufacturer. But mine's badass. It's stainless steel. It's made in LA. Gas shock, high-speed USBs, LED lighting, double magnets to hold the trapdoor to hide the stereo and the seat heaters. No rattles because twin magnets when it index locks. Again, from a master car. And there's a market for it. And the sublet network, especially in the transportation sector, often is very focused on value engineering everything to death. But in the end, right, that creates opportunities for your company, your sponsor that does the moldings, for you guys for following your visions and elevating what you execute. So fine, it's not for everyone. Let everyone else be a slut, and you be a classier call girl, and build your dreams.
You know what's funny is sometimes it takes a couple people to celebrate that. I can think early on, before, like right in the beginning with Kukin, Tyler, we would joke. I'm like, I would pour an 8-foot high foundation basement to be able to pour more money into trim on the other 2 floors. And I remember I said that, and everyone's like, I'm like, you've fallen in love with this potion that everyone else has been selling for so long, that the diluted, belly casing and all this other crap is what your norm is. But like, Tyler, to speak to you, I mean, when you did a kitchen, like, you made that kitchen what it should be. You didn't just go, all right, well, I'm renovating the kitchen, but the rest of your house has this kind of trim. You made that kitchen that oasis, and then it makes them almost have to drink the Kool-Aid, then expand to the next room.
Yeah, right.
Don't get me started on kitchens, guys, because I redid this kitchen, and the contractor who did the cabinetry and stuff, I finally, I was either going to kill him or just squint and just let him leave, because I modeled it and designed it, and the hood, you can't get the hood from this. I don't have enough battery. I'll show the joinery. The idiot oversized. Went in with his Makita and drilled the piss out of the hinges. So now they're all blown out. No matter what I do, his paint job sucks. He air shot 2 layers with no mechanical tooth. So everything's going to shit. And the tile I brought in from Morocco, and the guy was half done, but he started this corner. Oh no. And he didn't square it. He didn't center the corner. I'm like, what are you doing? And then he didn't want to back up. And and on and on and on. And then hardware, all the new hardware is crap. So I found this vintage hardware and then plated it and oil rubbed it myself. And then I went in and machined those because I couldn't find any that were worth the piss. But it's at the end of the day, here we are. It's been maybe 10 years. But every time I open any of those cabinet doors, I'm like, fucking bastard, idiot, slacker.
I mean, if I do the math on that, I think
Nick's wheels are turning right now.
I think we could do a kitchen for a Bronco. And leave the lights, because the lights are awesome on the ceiling, but everything else.
Yeah. So those I found in
I think you made them.
Galveston, Texas, from a old ship salvage yard. So for World War II East Coast patrol for German U-boats, they have those mounted on the deck. And that Good Old Things company in New York reproduces them in India. But I'm like, nah, I got to find them. So they were cheaper at the Galveston ship wrecking yard. So I gutted them, converted them to LED, got the UL rated cloth braided, but the proper rubber insulation. And then I think on Etsy or eBay scored that old Victorian salvage chain. And those ended up costing me less than the reproductions.
I'm so glad you said old good things. That's where I'm getting the wire mesh for these 2 pocket doors over here.
Oh, cool. Yeah, they're
just
pretty
ordered them.
resourceful.
They're awesome. They're the ones selling wire mesh glass, the old stuff.
Yeah, we're doing that for the Aston Martin factory environment in that car collection. Awesome. We just did a deep dive into brick facade modular systems and end cut flooring. One guy. maybe you know more. I can only find one guy who still did it the traditional Old English way. It's pretty nuts, which unfortunately is one of the things we're going to have to line item kill in that environment. But we're keeping the cool brick and laying system. And I'm not doing that fiberglass 4x8 bullshit faux brick that you touch and you feel like you're in Disneyland. We're going to EDM cut vintage brick and then do it on modular panels that interlock even on 90 corners.
Jesus.
This guy's got to be so excited to have had you on, except for when he got that price tag, the initial price tag.
That was a wee bit of a hiccup, but he knew what he was getting into.
I mean, I would assume so. I would assume so. It's not like the first time he came to you. You know, you've already built up that reputation. The people coming to you, they should know at this point.
Yeah, fortunately.
If you have to ask, you're probably not.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't mind the ask. I just love it that I'm at the point in my career where 99% of the time if somebody calls, they already get it and they know what they're getting into.
Well, I love
and, there's anomalies.
On your website, I think it's in the frequent asked questions. It's like, is an icon inexpensive? And it says, sorry, but no.
Nope.
And it's just like totally blunt. And it's like, I read that and immediately I'm like, I couldn't put that on my website. And I'm like, wait, why?
Why not?
Right. It's like, why couldn't I? It's like the fact, like it, because you, and John, I'm sure you get it. Tyler, I know you get it because you share them. It's like people reach out and it's like, oh yeah, I want this, here's the whole list. And it's like budget is just totally misaligned. And it's like they obviously spent zero time.
They watched HGTV and they were like, I could do this.
Oh God, the devil. Yeah, I had a client who took a Bronco, had it for like 2 weeks. He's actually a really good developer, builder in Malibu doing work you guys would dig. And he's actually the first client ever fired. And like 10 years later, we let him back in. And now we love him. But we can call him on his shit at any moment. So that's why it's good. But he said, hey, man, I'm bringing the truck back today. I want you to consign it and sell it for me. I'm like, well, what's wrong? Is there a problem? Did it break? Is something not up to par? He's like, no. It's just I'll order another one, but like I want the next one like not this nice. I'm like, okay. So you want me to tell my team to do another one, but not as well? Like,
bring it in. We could just beat it up some.
Yeah, it's just not going to work out. Buy a derelict if you want it to look like it's not done. That's one thing, and that's good fun. I want to do derelict houses.
Oh,
that'd be so much fun.
I feel like there's a lot of yeah. All right.
We have a client in Texas who took an old hunting cabin on his property that literally was like leaning and about ready to go down. He scanned it, forensically disassembled it, marked all the boards and everything, saved even the nails, stored it, built a whole new structure, badass stonework, gorgeous quarter sawn white oak, like just executed top notch, and then reassembled and clad the new structure in the original hunting shack with the lean. So it looks like an abandoned shack, and you open the door, and then it's like balls out cabin.
Just
That's
when
so
you think
cool.
there's a ceiling, he just blew the roof right off.
Forensically scanned it.
Yes.
Not just disassembled, but let's scan it first.
Well, this has really been fun. Nick, you owe me, I'll sign an NDA, but I want to see the SketchUp walkthrough tour
Okay.
of your facility.
I appreciate you following.
I really hope you build it. So if you don't, I will talk shit on your Instagram feed.
Do it.
And you guys stay out of his way and give him all the support that he needs. Don't kill the dream.
I don't.
No, John, this was
we
awesome.
definitely don't kill the dream.
No,
we
we
just
don't.
try and
No.
keep Nick planted. Sometimes Nick's head's in the clouds.
No, that's good. And same here. So is mine. And again, the importance of an alliance, of a team, of people you trust, who understand and respect you, but you respect their balance and you find the balance. But let him build it.
I'll help you out if you run into some trouble, Nick. Don't worry.
Same.
Dude, if I had the money, I'd
Thank you,
bankroll it.
boys.
I'm not there yet. I can't bankroll my own stupid ideas.
How long do you need? Are we talking like years, months?
Weeks.
My problem is I've been exposed to a demographic where money don't matter.
Right.
So now I can't afford my own tastes
Yeah.
Well,
due to my sensibilities,
I think we
sensitivities,
all
and
live in that world.
exposure. Yeah, it sucks, right?
I get that question all the time. How do you go home? And I'm like, I get to live vicariously through these houses. Like I live here
You're like,
until
I
I
love
turn it
my
over.
double wide.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I love my unfinished office for the last 3 years.
Yeah, I learned it too late in my career, but I forget who said it. It may have been another Henry Ford, but build for the masses, live with the classes, build for the classes, live with the masses. Wah, wah,
It's
wah.
true.
It's
What do you
so
drive,
true.
like a Toyota Tercel?
No, I'm not that. I'm a little more evolved than that. I got a pretty good fleet.
That's nice.
Will you share that book from the Henry Ford quotes?
It's not a publicly published book.
Oh,
It's
it's
not
not?
available. Yeah, Edsel Ford gave it to me as a gift.
Holy shit.
Right.
Many years ago, and it's like a corporate gifty thingy
Okay.
they give to people on occasion.
Fair
But
enough.
if anyone's interested in the history of Henry Ford, which is full of beautiful and horrible things, it was anti-Semite, Nazi-loving. There were some dark sides of Mr. Ford, but he was also a revolutionary genius. The best Henry Ford history book is called Wheels for the World, or Wheels of the World. That covers his history and it's and the history of the company. And it's
Cool.
it's a tomb, it's a monster, but it's a really good read.
That's awesome. John, this was pivotable. What did I say earlier?
Pivotal?
Pivoting. Pivotable.
Riveting?
I don't-
Pivoting. Just
Riveting.
making up words now.
This was a
But I know
pivotal.
the four of us had a great time. I hope we didn't bore the piss out of your viewers. And they're like,
No way.
who
Nah, who
is this
cares?
idiot?
Who cares?
Never heard of this contractor.
Who cares? It's not. It's
No
not
way.
for them.
This is just for us.
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure, gentlemen, and I thank you for your time and your interest. And if anyone's still listening, you can find us pretty much just Google Icon, or it's Icon 4x4 on Instagram, or that's our website and stuff. And my name is Jonathan Ward. Thanks for your time.
We have 4 watches to sell. Don't forget about
Yeah, exactly.
that. Post the link.
Hey, man, if you move the rest of the watches, I'm your co-host from the West Coast. I'm your remote anchor.
Done.
Done.
Yes, 100%.
All right.
This was
Be
a
well,
blast.
man. Take
Thanks.
care.
Have a
Be well.
good
Thank
one.
you so much.
Take care, guys.
He is my dad.
Like,
I
dude,
won't- like,
he did not let me down at all.
no.
Just walking around, going to the fridge. Like, I love
He was
him.
like, "Hold on, I gotta check my wife. I'm opening the safe." I was like, was that a joke? What? What?
Dude, he's amazing. I wish he was at his shop. He would have walked us around the shop, and you would have been blown away.
Did I ever tell you that one of my customers recently asked Ryan to grind or open a safe for him, and there was nothing inside of it? He's just like, I guess it wasn't in that one, and just left it at that.
Wait, what?
One of my customers recently was like, hey, like, do you think you could break into a safe for me? And I was like, yeah, probably. Like, I'll just cut it open. And like, he asked Ryan to grind open a safe for him, and there was nothing inside of it. And then he's like, I guess it's not in that one. But like, we
How
never
was it?
knew
Yeah.
what he was looking for. Nothing. And just, like, that was just his reaction.
That's
Super weird, right?
bizarre. Yeah.
Dude, how good is he?
That
I
was
didn't
such a
touch
good
any of my
conversation, man.
topics.
Yeah,
I know, and I kept reading you both because I didn't write any notes. I don't go into.
I
it,
have
but
mine open next to the screen
I
next
could
to me
see-
right
yeah.
now, and I'm like, okay. And then but I knew I forgot to say it. I was like, he's a talker, so that's why I put like triggers.
No, dude, I think that's the best podcast is
Yeah.
when he talks the majority of the time.
Yeah, I mean,
That was
we
so
could have him on again. I almost said like the COVID is why we got him. I started reaching out to people during COVID because I'm like, they're home.
Yeah.
So he was one of the guys when I was finishing out
He was taking a
Wilsondale.
tequila break when he was sewing a wallet together.
Dude, that watch,
Dude.
I think it's like 11 grand,
Yeah.
which isn't crazy for
No,
custom
for-
watches.
yeah,
it's
for a
not.
watch, no.
It's not crazy. It's out of my wheelhouse. But I was like, maybe I get a piece of this. But we should definitely push his.
His charity.
Yeah, it was
Go
really cool.
campaign. Well, we got two reviews on
Ooh.
iTunes.
Let's
we got a
hear
long.
'em.
We got a long one. So
Good or bad?
Hey, who wanted to ask John who the other two were that he followed? I was like, I don't want to ask because I don't want to be the guy he didn't follow. 'cause
Definitely
it's
not
probably-
me.
I'm like, I love you, and I don't want you to ruin me.
Yeah, I'd be like, oh, I followed Nick and Tyler.
Yeah,
and John was the one that reached out. All right, so Modern Craftsman has become a staple in my weekly routine. The duration, content, personalities not only keep my attention, but also cause me to rewind after the tools run in order to... What? Oh, yeah, to rewind after the tools run in order to not miss a word. The guests are great, but would love to hear more of the no guest episodes.
Oh.
I've listened to every podcast and love how the banter has changed over time. I was actually thinking about that. I wonder how our banter has changed, like especially as we get more comfortable with each other and giving each other shit, you know. But it's a highlight on Monday to hear both Johnny and Tyler rip into Nick and his. I didn't even read that ahead. Johnny and Tyler rip into Nick in his, some may say, bougie ways. Tyler, it's great to hear you speak more and more. Your methods and opinions are greatly valued. It seems like your personality keeps you from seeing yourself as others see you. The size of your company does not dictate the wealth of your influence that you have. Nick, I envy your ambition. You definitely have your hands full. Just be sure to appreciate what you've accomplished and where you are, and don't discount your current success by comparing it to where you want to go. John, you are a triple shot of espresso, which is hilarious because he doesn't drink coffee. Your in-your-face, never shy demeanor, or as I see it, passion, is a trait that you have definitely used to your advantage. Continue to be bold and never change, especially to satisfy a listener who doesn't want to hear hockey come from your mouth. The three of you, with your commitment to the MC Nation, is building a better community of builders and remodelers, and now possibly car guys. Many thanks, and may God continue to bless each of you and your families.
I feel like my mom wrote that.
That's a solid review.
That was Redemption Home Renovation. Dude, that was stellar.
Solid.
And
I feel like my mom made that.
I do take
Instagram
offense to
account.
bougie, though.
No, you're bougie.
Bougie.
You're
Definitely bougie. And we got one from Green Man's Go. I don't know. Great podcast. You guys are the best. I've been building homes for 26 years, and the insight and information you are providing is invaluable. Education and entertaining at the same time. Love the passion. Keep it up. Dude, so guys, drop a review. Like these are awesome, and this is absolutely what fuels the tank, especially after a great episode like today. The conversation is just fantastic. But if you guys want to give us some criticism and give us some, how you want to shape it sounds like we're doing a pretty good job, just to say. I'm gonna pat ourselves on the back. But we have a link in our Instagram, The Perry Modern Craftsman on Instagram, for our Survey Monkey, and I think John's probably looking at some of it.
I am, yeah. I mean, some of the comments are topics to talk about. I think it's great to hear you guys and girls, how you guys and girls started out. Another one is they want to hear about low carbon building. They also want a podcast
we talked about Kyle.
Yeah. Construction software, Co-Construct, Procore, and Build a Trend. And people do love hearing about just us, just the daily, how we run our business, the ins and outs. Let's go to guest suggestion. Wow. Holy cow. That's a huge one. It's just, I can't see it.
But is it a list is a huge one, or the guest?
It's a massive list. It's like Idaho Painter.
Oh yeah. He's got a good channel.
Yeah. Modern Oak.
Idaho Painter.
Sherwood Reno. There's a bunch here. I love all the suggestions on here. Yeah, I have to reach out to a bunch of people. But yeah, I think there's 69 responses. People love the 3 hour.
Dude, we're
2 and 3 hours. There's 36 people that voted for 3 hours, 32 voted for 2 hours, and 1 voted for an hour.
Dang.
Intro, you guys do it great. Love the no edits. Good. Nothing really to change. As Nick would say, sweet and to the point.
Love it. Next week, we got Ben Bogey on.
Oh, that's right.
All right, guys, this podcast was brought to you by Duration Moulding and Millwork. Imagine siding a dormer any time of the year without the need for sealing any of the field cut edges or using materials to hold the siding off of the roofing material. That's just one example of what you can do with Duration beveled siding. Time savings, unmatched durability, and great looks. To learn more about Duration Polyash products, please visit their all-new website at durationmillwork.com.